talking, but
It's all right. People will be here, and we're on roll. So what is this? This is MMA Chats Free for All, where we discuss whatever the hell we want. Usually it's just current events and stupid crap going on, and whatever piques our fancies. For now, it's just me, Dusty Cubes, Luke Centrist, and Ed. Say hello.
hello, everybody.
All right, so Andrew's probably going to be jumping in a few minutes, I suppose. He's always late. And yeah, what are the current things going on? I know I had to freak out about a hurricane. I don't know about you, Ed, because you're further up north than I am.
No issues here.
Yeah, we did the whole 9 yards in preparation, and we haven't even seen a drop of rain where I'm at. And I'm in Northern Virginia. Southern Virginia got hit pretty hard. Not as hard as North and South Carolina. What fascinates me is that there was a lot of preparation, and evacuation was really emphasized this time around.
Even for
And
you?
the evacuations, actually, not for me. I wasn't in the evacuation zone.
Right.
But despite the evacuations, we still had some deaths. I think the last time I checked, it was 5. And I don't know if that's
I think it's up to
increased
11.
since then. Well, up to 11. I don't know, man. I don't know why people are so stubborn to think that they can survive Mother Nature at its worst. It's insane that people can think that they can just brave a storm while also being told to evacuate. It's also unfortunate. I think the first account was a house. It was a whole family, wasn't it, with some children involved?
Mother and child were killed by a falling tree.
Yeah. So, I don't know, man. It's like, how can you ignore a hurricane and just believe you're going to be fine? I'm sure many more thousands stayed behind, but, whose fault is it when you've been told to evacuate many days before? So no evacuations. I know I was looking into it, and I heard some as early as Monday.
Early as
I don't know, man.
Evacuate?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. You can't really evacuate at the last minute.
Well, that's what I was going to
You're just going to get stuck.
Everything's fine until it's too late. Then help can't come. And
it's crazy. And then I don't know. Do you listen to the New York Times daily podcast?
I haven't in a long time, actually. But
right. Well, they actually did a story. They did a 2-part story based off of the recent the Houston hurricane. Or was it a hurricane, or was it just like a big storm? I think it was a hurricane. And there was this family that didn't evacuate, but I guess it's just insane. There's like a lot of levels of failure that were involved that resulted in the death of a woman. So if you want me to break it down, so what happens is this couple, and I believe they have 2 young children, the day before the hurricane, his wife is in surgery. So they actually go home that day after the surgery, and during the hurricane, she starts to have complications.
Mm-hmm.
But guess what? All emergency services are tied up. It's going to be very difficult to get somebody out there to get this woman to the hospital. And it was It was flooded, so you can just drive into the street. So he called, I think, a total of 4 times to emergency services. All of the calls were recorded, so you actually get to hear him speak to the dispatchers. At that time, they didn't know how to handle all of these water rescue calls. So, unfortunately, there was no prioritization system.
Mm-hmm.
They just didn't matter how severe your issue was, they just put you in a queue. Like if you were about to die, it didn't matter. So there was a failure on the city preparedness part, especially when it came to prioritizing emergency calls for rescues.
Mm-hmm.
So he called 4 times. I don't think he stressed enough in the calls that it was like a life or death situation, which had me thinking, as like, if I was in that situation, I would not be polite on the phone. It's just, your wife is there basically dying, and he sounded like calm and like what was going on wasn't a big deal. I don't know. If I was him, I'd be freaking out over the phone and trying to impart that what was happening was a life and death situation.
Of course. Yeah.
So this goes on for 2 days, and then finally he finds like some volunteers just speeding around in a boat,
Paddling by.
and he stops them. Yeah, he stops them. They put his wife on the boat, and they get to clearer roads so they can get ambulance access. Well, actually, what they do is they put her in a dump truck, because a dump truck was able to take on higher waters.
Mm-hmm.
So they drive out to the highway. They give 911 a call, and finally, he tells them, "Oh, she's having trouble breathing. She's basically dying," and they diagnose her as being in septic shock. But the ambulance arrives too late, and she dies. But it's not only a failure of the city preparing for evacuation. Actually, because of her condition, the hospital failed to prescribe her a specific drug that was supposed to severely reduce the risk of septic shock due to blood clotting. So it was just a catastrophic amount of failures that culminated in the woman's death. So there were so many people to blame. You can blame the hospital, you can blame the city, you can blame, the husband for not being extremely passionate enough. What's that?
For them not evacuating.
Yeah, there's so many different things that came together that resulted in this. It's like you can't place blame on one single person in the case of his wife dying. And I don't know, it just seemed like he wasn't really aware.
You didn't think it happened to him. It's that simple.
I don't know. Well, he's just single parent now. This happened during the Houston disaster there. But yeah, life or death situations, it seems like he did not really act on them in a way that, I don't know. I felt if I was in his position, I'd be completely frantic and trying to do every single thing possible that I could do to get some type of help. Because in 2 days, he only called emergency services 4 times. And by the end, it was obvious that she was dying. So I was like, Jesus Christ, man. It upset me. The podcast upset me on so many levels. It's just so many different people failed. And what happened was a woman died.
Yeah, and that's happened 1,000 times in the last 10 years or whatever. Same
Yeah,
cavalcade of bad decision making or indecision led to demise
yeah,
events. I mean, I can understand people's reluctance to flee. Where are they going to go? What's going to happen to my shit? You know, all that kind of stuff. We'll be all right. You know, we're on the high ground or we're on the third floor, so we'll wait it out. I mean, you can understand all that going through people's minds.
yeah. I can totally understand that because just thinking about it myself, like
Here's
I
an
live on a second story, so I don't know if we'd have that same reluctance to evacuate, but I think we would evacuate because if you have a child,
yeah, no,
many things can go wrong.
changes the dynamic for sure. Here's
Yeah.
an unpopular opinion of mine. I'm not all. I hate to say, I'm not all that interested in these weather stories unless it happens to do with my weather, and I know how selfish that sounds. I don't mean it to sound selfish, but you know, there's a storm going on somewhere, all the time, and you know, if it's not local, I don't want to say I don't care. Of course, I care. I don't want anything to happen to anybody, but um, this endless coverage bores me to tears. I mean, you know, I hope people listen. I hope the responders do what they usually do, which is a great job, etc. You want no loss of life or treasure, but there's nothing more boring to me than hearing about a weather story and it's not your weather, you know? And I
Well, I
mean,
understand what you mean. Like, if you turn on CNN, it's just like 24-hour hurricane news, and you see Anderson Cooper and Don Lemon like standing out in the rain.
right,
I totally get what you mean. It's like as if nothing else in the world is happening
right.
that day.
That's really what I'm getting at, and that information needs to be conveyed to the people who are going to be affected 24/7 for good reason. But for the rest, and again, I'm not saying don't cover it. Obviously, I'm just saying that you know the rest of the country is involved. I know. I mean, this is coming off way more insensitive than I need to. Just saying that, you know.
Well, the only reason I brought it up is because I'm in close proximity. So
Yeah.
during
Well,
the
it's stalled.
first inklings of the trajectory,
It's only
it was possible that it came and hit this area, or at least part of it hit this area. And we did our preparations, but it wasn't like I wouldn't say regardless, preparation should be taken, but we did everything we needed to do and it didn't come anyway. But even if the same situation happened again, we would still prepare.
yeah.
Like, regardless if by chance it didn't hit us this time.
Yeah, well, it's good prep for the next time when it really matters for you. How old's your son? He's like 2 or 3, right?
Yeah, daughter's 2.5.
Daughter, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm not gonna screw around with weather.
No,
It's not worth it.
no, of course not.
And especially when it comes to water-based weather, since I'm the only one in the family that can actually swim.
Plus, you can
So
go.
I don't want to.
You could deal with going a couple of days without eating or eating, you know, something out of a can or something. But when you got a 2-year-old, man, forget it. Yeah, I mean, you need lots of things around you to make that kid happy, and being without power, or get it. I mean, would not want to deal with
Yeah,
that.
we went pretty pretty good. Like, the only thing we were worried about was power and water, and we did prep for that. So I bought like a hand crank generator to charge cell phones, and some water buckets to collect rainwater. But looks like we really didn't need it. But hey, now we're prepared for next time.
Well, if that thing moves north, you're going to get a hell of a lot of rain.
Yeah, we would get a hell of a lot of rain, and there's some areas here that are extremely vulnerable to flooding. I think there was like, we had a week of some hard rains, but it wasn't like, we didn't have heavy wind. It was just a lot of rain for a while, about a week's worth. And then there was this town in Maryland that got almost completely destroyed by floods. And this wasn't a hurricane. It was just a week of rain. So there's a lot of vulnerability in this area. Not in my particular area, because I'm about 300 feet above sea level, but there are some areas around here that are very vulnerable. All right. What do you think of I know it's kind of old news, but the Nike campaign with Colin?
I find it a minor distraction at most. You mean, where do I come?
And what do you think what do you think it's distracting from?
What? Oh, I meant I'm not interested. It doesn't. It doesn't. Well, it's not that it's a distraction from anything. I just don't think it's a very important story. And
No, it's not, but a lot of people think it is. That's the problem.
I'm right. I'm narrowly talking about the Nike issue, not the broader issue of what all this entails. I'm talking about Nike hiring him and so on. To me, that's just smart business, and this is the society we live in, and I pass no judgments in that regard. So I have no issue. I have no personal animus towards Kaepernick in any way on any of that, nor do I for Nike. I think it was a very shrewd move. Obviously, what I find also kind of interesting is, well, the if I was a Trump supporter, which I'm certainly not, I would be talking about the fake news regarding this story, which was every headline was Nike's sales are up 31%. 31% from when? From yesterday? From a minute ago? From 1957? I mean, there's no way their sales are up 31% over a year ago. I mean, there's no way. I mean, I haven't looked into it. I just know that quoting a percentage of an increase, the only way that becomes, I mean, the stock market is up 3,000% since 30,000% since 1929. What does that happen?
I like this stuff. You know, it's really helpful. The only way that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a distraction, but there's a lot of important things going on. Like,
well, hold on. Before we move on from that topic, I'm curious what your views are too, because, I mean, my view as a former conservative and now liberal for the last 10 years of, moving left, I have no problem whatsoever with any form of peaceful protest, and I don't care what it is. I've never been angry at protesters protesting any subject matter, so long as it was, not burning buildings down, right? I mean, so to me, it's like it's our highest right, our primary right. It's what this country was founded on. As somebody who's a patriot who doesn't wear it on his sleeve, I find it kind of grotesque when people question the patriotism. You know that saying, the last refuge of a coward is patriotism. The question the patriotism of others because they are using their free speech to voice their displeasure about whatever. So I didn't criticize when the women were marching in the street. I didn't criticize the people right outside my apartment when the Iraq War was going to start. I didn't I mean, I don't understand why I would. I mean, it's at best, it's none of my business, and at worst, I'm for it 100% or what have you. So I've walked by the UN building 1,000 times, and there's always people out there holding up signs because something's wrong. Something went down in Timbuktu. You know, no problem with it at all. I'm not surprised that the NFL can't find the guy a job. I mean, obviously they're all in cahoots and he's a troublemaker and that kind of financial reality is going on. So I think it's just another thing for us to fight over. I think the primary takeaway is we live in a free society where people have free voice. And if he can make 50 million bucks off of it, whatever, it's fine. I don't see the problem. I don't, you know, it's not really that the whole Nike thing isn't political to me at all. I think that, boy, I'm going to sound a little harsher than I should, but the fact that sports teams have made patriotism so important to selling their product, okay? Stand for the national anthem, which again, I'm not against per se, but then they have the military out there and the flag waving before every football, baseball, and whatever game. And this whole to-do, hey buddy.
Hold up.
They now
Hey. Give me a second.
Hey,
sorry about that.
Now the chickens come home to roost, right? Their business model. I'm getting a lot of feedback. So can someone quiet there?
Yeah, go ahead and mute if you're currently speaking.
So, you know, this sounds awfully cynical, but these professional sports organizations have used patriotism to sell their product and the military, which again, I'm not against at all. And now it's not going their way. Okay. And they're not happy about it and calling them unpatriotic. So, you know, I kind of have a problem with that. There's nothing wrong with, you don't want to stand for the national anthem? Who cares?
Are you talking about the Colin Kaepernick thing?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Here's the thing. I get it. Like, I get why people are pissed. I'm not going to say I don't. Because you see that it is conservatives that are genuinely getting upset about the whole matter. Yeah. And I get it. You know, one of the moral foundations that they greatly respect is loyalty. And they feel that being unpatriotic is being disloyal to the country. And they believe that not doing those things for the flag are unpatriotic. Other people have different opinions about what patriotism actually is. You know, some of our founding fathers were basically want us to question the government and question the direction that the government takes over matters. But there are those who put loyalty above questioning, and that's typically what's done on the conservative side if you're going for like the moral foundations theory that Haidt has put forth. But the reaction is not surprising.
No.
I'm not going to say it's right or wrong. It's not surprising to me at all.
You know, I mean, I don't think it's necessary for me to say. I can't imagine a time when I would consider not standing for the national anthem. Frankly, but that's not the issue. The issue is the freedom aspect of it. I mean, the person sitting next to me at the ball game doesn't want to stand for the national anthem. Good. I mean, whatever. I don't understand why. Would you rather live in a total, you know, in North Korea? You better stand, right? I mean, we don't want enforced patriotism and enforced loyalty. We want freedom of choice, freedom of association, whatever. It's again, beware the person who questions the patriotism of others. I mean, you know, and by the way, you don't have to be patriotic.
Well said.
Yeah, like I come at this from a slightly different angle. It's mainly because of who I tend to listen, because I listen to economists all the time and people of that ilk that are independent media types tend to be on the mid-right. So they'll be like quasi-libertarian, quasi-conservative with that actually speaks up against their people and don't just bullshit for like TV minutes, for if you know what I mean by that. So they their beef with this is rather than the kneeling seems to the people that I've been listening to as of lately, or of the conservative persuasion, are the ones that are complaining about it, that are not on the group-ish bandwagon, is disingenuous, the kneeling. Like, it's not that, and I'm not saying that the person doesn't care about the cops thing. It's more of like, when you hear a football guy that gets paid, like, paid, let's just say a lot, say something along the lines of, I'm giving up so much for this. And, you know, I'm giving up this when he's literally living in a mansion and he has all the opportunities in the world. And I doubt, like, I'm not a football guy or a basketball guy, so I can't really, but, you know, it doesn't feel right. And I think it's because, and also people of that of the other political persuasion is relatively very, very poor as well, just like everyone else. Like a nice chunk of them, some of them gone into the liberal camp, some of them in conservative camps, going in their little bubbles. And so in the conservative bubble is like, someone brought up the Hyatt's thing. Like, it makes a lot of sense when somebody brings up, okay, well, kneeling from the thing. Yeah, kneeling for the thing, and then all you hear from their side of the news is, because they're completely polarized news-wise as well, you're not hearing people of the other side, or not taking that seriously because it's not a part of their daily routines.
So why do they say that it's disingenuous though? Because because he's a rich guy and has a lot of privileges and he's using it for attention?
Oh, sorry about that. Sorry for speaking over you like that.
Oh, sorry. I was just asking if are they saying like that he's a rich guy with a lot of privilege and is using that what he's doing for attention or something like that?
That's not all of it, not in so many words. It's a part of it. Like, it's a small bit part, but that's one of the complaints. Like I said, I'm listening to people that are like day traders, economists, deals with metals, etc. So they are not exactly the normal, like, go with the flow conservatives, but at the same time, they are still very relatively patriotic, but they're not war hawks at the same time. So we're not talking about the same ilk of the stereotype. We're not talking about the stereotype. We're talking about the metals guys, the crypto guys, the what's it called guys that would be between like the libertarian left and right, and some people on the and like I said, I'm going to use Hyatt's work on this one, and just social media if you hype up a group and the tit for tat action of this one's the identity politics space, I guess, because I think most people don't care. Like me, I think it's more like the tit for tat arguments with the identitarians. There we go. I was trying to word that. The identitarians. So one is saying these guys are, these guys are racist, bigot, homophobic, etc. Pat, these guys don't care about our country. These guys are traitors, etc., etc., etc. Pat, these guys, and then they're just kind of with more velocity hitting that ball until it, and I think that ball is going to injure somebody at some point. I hope that analogy made sense.
No, that makes sense. It is pretty polarizing, and people have a lot of identity politics on both sides about it. I think that's a good point.
Yeah, that's who's doing the bulk of the complaining on the right and the left is the identitarians on those ends of the spectrum who, funny enough, I saw a podcast about people who are relatively interested, like hyper interested in politics. And I think it was Michael Brooks, and he said from the Majority Report, and he said something along the lines of like those types don't have a life really. They just look up the politics and they kind of go overboard, and I think that's just the identitarians as a whole. Like besides like having the money to afford the Nikes and lighting them on fire, like. And I guess because it's temperament of those on the right that would care about this, it makes perfect sense. And to be fair, if this kills Nike, I'm actually relatively happy about that. But at the same time, if it doesn't, well, who cares? It's Nike's still alive, whatever, I guess. That's basically my take on it. Like, like you said, I'll just call you Dr. MMA. The majority, like this is just a distraction in every sense of the word from the real problems. Like right now, we're literally in the brink of World War III, and with Syria because somebody. I forgot what her name is. Someone in the press said, "Oh, just so you know, if Syria if Syria does another gas attack, which they literally have no incentive because they're almost finished their little war with ISIS or whatever, or the Kurds or whoever it is, and they want to get rid of all the terrorists that are bothering them, and then America goes like, just so you know, if you do another gas bombing, we're going to come there and stop you like the little trolls we are. And then Russia's like, hey, just so you know, if you go and stop them, we will nuke you with nukes. Well, not nuke you in so many words, but we will respond. And China says, yeah, we'll also kind of respond, just so you know. And we're running out of allies, and our dollars, not like, let's just say our people are circumventing that nicely. Like there's so much crazy stuff going on over there, and then I think this is just a massive crying of children. That's how I see it. Just children, or grown-up children that didn't learn how to play nice. Jonathan Hyde actually said it was like you need children that had never learned how to play with people of outside of themselves, have now formed their little groups and crying out really loudly on the TV space, on the internet space, and because they have relative connections to people of like the TV, or just loud enough to get seen. Nike goes and panders, and I don't know whether they're going to suffer long term or they're going to be happy long term about this. But You know, if nothing happens, yay. If something happens to Nike, double yay. Like, you know, in a net negative for them. But besides that, no, I doubt anyone really cares, because I actually talked to, you know, people at work at my deli job that I finally got back, and told them and asked them some random questions about what's happening about the world, and they're like, oh, I have no idea what you're on about. And that's my take on it, at least. So yeah, this is just a group problem that has a little bit more, you know, you could see them a little clearly, but it's just kids spatting about something. I know they're adults, but you know, but on that count, you know, with that context, just children crying about not knowing how to play with the other side.
So in terms of World War III, I'm really not very familiar with global events and foreign policy and stuff like that. But do you think World War III is really that likely? If, like, for example, you said that Syria is not that likely to make another gas attack. And also, in terms of Nike, I wonder what you guys have all heard about how their profits have been affected by that Colin Kaepernick ad, because I've heard reports that it's hurt their sales, and I've also heard the opposite, that it's actually helped their sales.
Well, Dusty, you're on, right? You can hear. Dusty and I were just talking about that before you got on. Andrew, okay. I was saying that if I was a Trump supporter, I'd be talking about the fake news around this story, because every story that, you know, every story, 9 out of 10 stories related to this are quoting this figure that Nike sales are up 31%. Now, saying anything is up 31% is only meaningful when you tell me how long the time horizon you're talking about. So there's no 31% since what? The day before the stupid story broke? Last year, 1954? I mean, what do they talk? It is so, I mean, what Henry Ford's famous quote, there's 3 kind of lies: lies, damn lies, and statistics. You know, I mean, you can use statistics to based on your time horizon and so on to prove just about any point. So
yeah, to paint any picture, as Hunter says.
Thank you. That you put it better than I did.
Like the American economy's booming.
Look, the guys have a right to do it. And that's the end of the story. I mean, this reminds me of Charlie Hebdo. I mean, if the first question out of your mouth on Charlie Hebdo was, well, what was the cover of the magazine? What did it say? You've already given up your free speech rights, and you're not thinking, in my view, my opinion, you're not thinking about the larger issue. It doesn't matter what it said on the cover of that magazine. I don't give a shit what they wrote.
Yeah, I agree.
So
I agree too.
Right. So these football players, I don't care how, again, this is my view, I don't care how entitled they are. I don't care what their records are. It doesn't matter. They have a right to do it. The NFL has used the military and patriotism to sell their product. And now when it's a tough issue, you know, the chickens have come home to roost, right? They used it to build up everything after 9/11. I'm not saying I'm necessarily against all that. I'm just saying that they've sold this whole patriotism meme up the fucking ass at the beginning of every game with the honor guard and all this nonsense. And now when someone is saying speech that certain people don't like, everybody's questioning everybody else's patriotism. I mean, it's absurd. You're under no burden to be patriotic. You're under no burden to stand for anything you don't want to stand for. And that is a right. Preserving the rights of them preserves my rights. And grown-ups should understand that. And again, I'm not saying I wouldn't stand. I personally would. I don't. I'm not in their camp on this issue, but that's not it's just like the Charlie Hebdo. It's not about what's on the cover of the magazine. It's the principle behind it all.
I have a question for Mark. Why do you wish for Nike's downfall?
Let's just say heard enough about it. Like, I've learned, funny enough, from both left and right, from right of center and of far, I guess, that let's just say they're too big for their britches, and because apparently they're one of the reasons that the economy is like it is. They outsource a lot of their labor. They skimp on tax. And these are anecdotes. So these are some things I heard, and I'm trying.
Here's what I'll say about that: most clothing companies outsource their labor.
Yeah, I'm not too down on that. To be fair, it's more of that. That's just one of them. It's just I want to see them shrink. I don't want to see them dead. I want to see them shrink back into America, to be fair, and pay their taxes like everyone else. At the same time, they could outsource all they want. I just want to see I consider things like a Nike, even though it's not exactly free, like the super multinational companies that pulls that off. I tend to call them just the big three of corporate. So there's a big three of food, big three of movies, big three of et cetera, et cetera. They're the big three of corporate. They're not exactly they're chaotic neutral. I don't know. They're just in kind of a. It would be better if we got some fresh blood coming out, maybe some new sneakers from different platforms.
Yeah, we got Yeezys. That's what you got.
So you want like smaller entrepreneurs and smaller businesses to.
They're there, and their sneakers tend to be very expensive.
Oh wow, really? Yeah, I want to basically what I want to see is some competition, visible competition, with them v Nike. So Nike actually has to care about the little guy, and the little guy has to care about Nike. But they don't completely wipe each other out. This is across the row.
All right,
just,
so now that
all forms of those kind of things.
Now that I didn't know your feelings about the big corporations, I wanted to pivot into something because this is something that we talked about on our MMA Facebook group.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Can you just look at the group chat? I just sent something to you. Thanks. Sorry to interrupt.
I will when I get back to the desk. I'm mobile right now.
Okay.
But I'll definitely check that out.
Sorry.
One thing I want to talk about that's related is Jeff Bezos donating $2 million, or $2 billion, I'm sorry, to homeless causes. Now, what do you guys think of all that? Is he still...
Oh, sorry. Is he the guy from the Amazon guy?
Yeah,
Amazon CEO.
The richest person in the world.
That sounds awesome on the face of it. That's the first time I've heard anything about it, though, so that's all I know.
How could it be anything other than awesome?
On the face of it, it sounds so nice that I'm unbelievably skeptic. Because didn't the same guy literally say he won't, leverage his power over a town because he didn't want to pay taxes? He said he won't work with this town somewhere in America and some other places. It happened relatively recently. I don't remember the name of the town or city. I remember they said, hey, just so you know, there's a homeless crisis here, and we need to we need to get people into homes. So we want you, Amazon, to either pay some form of tax so we can to state one of the, I think it was a governor or senator or whatever, a newer person kind of won a case, and they said something along the lines of, hey, can you pay taxes in this area so we can pay for a program to fix our homeless problem, funny enough. And then I just hear this from what you just said, and I just find it kind of hilarious in a sadistic way.
So you think he might be doing that to avoid taxes or something like that?
That or optics. Maybe it was a giant bad look for him to just like say no to that so plainly, and maybe he got a lot of backlash, or maybe maybe it's a shell company because like, you know, pulling off a Trump. I hear Trump like says he's going to donate to somebody, and then it goes like just to a shell company, to another shell company, or just goes back to his own business or something. I don't know how that works exactly.
Well,
I just remember hearing that from independent news source.
no, I remember that story.
It's been a while.
I mean, my personal view is I remember that story, Mark. And I mean, again, my view is I look at that purely as a business decision. They were looking for places to build huge hubs to, you know, collect and send out their packages, and certain towns and so on didn't want to play ball and didn't make deals for them. So to me, I mean, that's just satisfying shareholder requirements again. And you know, the $2 billion for the homeless. I mean, I don't care if he did it for the most selfish reason imaginable.
Yeah, I hope it actually happens. That's basically what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's a good point, Ed.
If he's throwing $2 billion to the homeless problem, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
And I, you know,
that would be great. I really hope this is actually legit, to be fair. It's just I'm super skeptical because I've become nice and like I was jaded before I came like now when it came to the internet. I've at this point hit like level 3 jaded. Like the amount of stuff I've heard over like recently after like somewhat comprehending and getting kind of my head over the stuff that I've been listening to as of late. Like, I don't understand it completely, but I understand to the point where like I could put more than one thing together, I guess, if that makes sense. I just got more pessimistic as time just grew on. Thank you, Money GPS. So I really hope this is the case. I really hope he actually does. I don't think it was the goodness of his heart. Maybe it's optics. Maybe he has a friend named Jake that said, "Hey, just so you know, I'm homeless." It's like, "Oh, I'll send you through some what billion for you, your friends, in your county or whatever." I don't care. I hope that's the case. But I'm just like that I got that strong skepticism because, like, you know, the stuff I've heard over the last few years, because I haven't been active in like not even in politics. I've been like just researching stuff because I don't have the backstory to the companies involved, the history of the oligarch class that we see and don't see, and my ever growing loathing for the banks and et cetera, et cetera. And I'm just kind of jaded at this point. I'm pretty sure I'm going to hit level 4 jade once I completely understand the history.
And become totally cynical.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in here.
Yeah.
The reason I brought up Bezos is because I actually work for Amazon.
Holy me.
And here's my take. I say regardless of the motive, the motive is really inconsequential to the act.
Oh yeah.
In this specific case. There's some people who are damned if you do and damned if you don't. I would say Bezos at times definitely falls under that. As we did, I did post an article on the Facebook page, and there was quite a lengthy debate regarding, does he pay his employees enough? You know, the Bernie Sanders bill that says, oh, any Amazon employees on food stamps should be paid by Bezos. And, these are things I completely disagree with working for Amazon. I work for Amazon. I'm not on food stamps. It's like, what are you trying to do? And I'm not in a high position in Amazon either. I probably get paid less than a warehouse worker, but I don't have any financial problems. So what does that say about
it might be
certain
your
people?
living area. It might be
Well,
your
look
living
at my
area.
living area is the second highest cost area in the country.
Almighty me! Wow. Oh
So
yeah,
that's why
you're
I'm-
right. You said something about the storm, right? DC. You live there?
I live in Fairfax, which is the second highest cost of housing and living in the country. Yet I'm making less than. Why?
Which one is the
I'm
most
sorry,
expensive,
I'm
Dusty?
sorry. It's just like
The most expensive is Loudoun County, which is next to Fairfax.
I'm sorry. As someone that deals with the annoyance of rent, I'm just like, if you're able to. Oh, actually, I think I know why. Actually, now that you brought that up.
Well, one, I'm not single, so I'm not living by myself.
Nah, it's just money management skills, man. That's it.
Well, I don't buy anything. It's just I'm
okay,
so
that's money
frugal.
management
I'm
skills.
so frugal. I refuse to buy a car. That's how frugal I am. Like, I have enough money to buy a car. I have enough money to put pay for half of a new car, like put a down payment.
But that's not your only job, right?
No, I got 2 jobs, but what I'm saying is if there are people that need food stamps and they're working for Amazon, what kind of decisions are those people making?
Actually, I have a little conspiracy theory on that one. Actually,
Well, what is
you
it?
brought up gives me the excuse to actually delve deep in this idea I kind of had a while ago. And let me run this by you. And it's just like, I remember how I just brought up money management. I don't think it's as simple as that. It's like, what's a good example? There was a movie out there once. This is an example I'm saying, and I didn't even watch the movie, I just saw a clip of it. But basically, I think it's from Conan the Barbarian, I think. And there was an example where a impoverished lady that was a victim of a big muscly dude, bad guy. Basically, he offered her, I think, a knife, and he made
Arnold?
the point. He made the point that he made the point that she wouldn't even have the concept of attacking me with this, because it's not even a factor of being taught. It's like recognizing she could do damage to the guy. And I'm putting this in a financial perspective, as in maybe they're paying, and I think this goes in the country at large, to be fair. It's not that not just as simple of giving somebody money, because they wouldn't know how to spend it in a way or gain money in a way to make that money make more money, or make that money stick in a way. It's like figuring out a very complicated question, and over time you figure it out as you go along. That's how I've learned. Like, over time, I figured out how to manage money to the point of kind of surviving, because I've been being bullied by Social Security for so long. But at the same time, I wouldn't even have the concept in my head of doing buying metals, like buying metal to hedge against inflation in general. Like, I don't buy a lot. I'm not rich. I just buy like one per paycheck. Or what's another example? or even looking out to other financial vehicles to maybe enrich my ability to maybe gain a future by, like, one of my personal goals is trading. But I'm garbage at statistics for now, but maybe I'll get better in the future. But I'm looking towards that path because I happened upon enough conversations and enough information to get me to those jumps. My point is, sorry for being very scattered about this, but my point is people within different standards of living or different areas has completely different concepts of whether it be how to manage their money, what to put their money in, how it will affect different metrics of their life, and and also, plus taxes, plus act, and what to do in certain situations. And I'm wondering if they've been put in the not thinking creatively, like I hear the purpose dumbing down of America, like making it so people don't learn how to manage money at a young age. I mean, like a kid, like learning maybe economics or learning how to just like how to save or what to put your money in or how to barter or how to gain a skill that doesn't need a job per se, and learn those things to not have to rely on an outside, not to go to default, hey, let me ask the grown-ups for help, this case benefits or Social Security Act. And I think this is one of America's many problems, but at the same time, I can't really articulate it well because I didn't have a chance to have this conversation yet.
So are you saying that if people who work at Amazon have a lower income, they're less likely to be good at managing their money?
No, not even. It's something a little bit more simple than that even. Some people that works for Amazon are straight up monsters at managing money and are straight up entrepreneurial and can make lots of money. But at the same time, there are other people that won't make the jumps to certain concepts that could get them out of their current situation. But that's not a matter.
Here, let me cut in.
Yeah, I'm trying to go through this thought, so I need people's help with this.
Yeah, let me cut in. The reason I bring up this topic is because, one, it's not always about money management. It's just simply could be due to hustle. Like in my instance, I could just work a 48-hour week and be struggling, but I don't. I work a 60-hour week. And am I complaining about it? Hell no, because I'm getting out of it what I want to get out of it, and that's financial security. Well, for instance, the people who are also working at Amazon, who say, the news reports say thousands are on food stamps and working for Amazon. I question that. And the reason I question that is because if you have a family and you have mouths to feed, you do what you have to do. If the 40-hour work week isn't cutting it, then you gotta do some more work. That's just simple math. You gotta do more to produce. Now, the 40-hour work week, if we're looking at the average income of the lower tier Amazon employees, I think it's 28,000. 28,000. It's like, really? You're getting 28,000 a year and you're struggling?
How much is that a week?
That seems insane to me. What's that?
How much is that a week? I get about 11 per paycheck. Per hour. So how's that per hour?
28,000 is it's $2,000 a month, roughly.
$2,000. All of my hate. And they're struggling? Oh,
Well, that's the average salary for Amazon, but we're talking about
I wish
a
I
lot of
made
the
that
people
much
who are on
money.
food stamps. A lot of the people who are on food stamps are part-time. They're not seeking other employment outside of Amazon. Because if that was the case, then they'd be able to cover themselves. But
like,
I think there's a lot of,
yeah.
there's just a lot of issues. There's just a lot of statistics that are hidden that you have to question. Like, okay, thousands of Amazon employees are on food stamps. I was like, okay, are they part-time employees? Do they have another job to supplement their part-time income? So there's just this narrative that paints Amazon as being evil for not allowing people, because, the same thing happened with Walmart at a time. At a time, Walmart was accused of employing people and they were still using government assistance.
To be
And
fair,
my
with Walmart,
argument,
I kind of still half believe it. I don't believe it completely. I half believe it because it's not being paid. I think it's just working conditions. I don't know about the paid part because I would have to know a couple of. I have to fill a couple of holes in my this thing I'm trying to learn that I would love to fill up those holes, but it'll take time. So.
yeah, I totally understand.
Yeah.
I think the
that's an
problem is
important
with
point.
the sacrifice. Like, if the sacrifice of leisure is the problem. Like, I've almost sacrificed all of my leisure time, but at least I have a way to be financially secure and not have to rely on things. And some people, it's not easy. Some people can't do 60 hours like I do and remain sane. That's just not possible. But the thing is, all these people who are making millions and millions, they're working way more than 60 hours a week. Like,
yeah, they tend to be extreme workaholics, right?
Yeah, those people are sacrificing immense leisure in the pursuit of financial success. So people don't really think about the trade-offs that have to be looked at in regard to that. Yes, there were very happy times in the past in America where a 40-hour work week at a factory job would support an entire family without having any other members of that family work at all. But because here's the thing, you can't stop the global society. We're too interconnected now. Because we're such a global society now, we have access to labor that's not within our own country, and that's just the fact. And more of these jobs are going to be globally accessible as they have been. And they're driving down the prices, wages of specific jobs. Like, for instance, computer programmers are just engineers. Because engineering jobs in the space of computer programming, those wages have been driven down due to the access to overseas employment. So I know there are a lot of countries that outsource a lot of their engineering to countries like India.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And things of that nature. Yeah, Twitter had an office in India. And just driving around in DC, I've met like other computer programmers, and they told me their salaries, and I just kind of facepalm because it's, they're being imported on work visas. They're working at tech firms, and they're making $30K a year.
Whoa.
So I'm saying, like, the access to global resources in the labor field is going to definitely drive down prices with that access. So just railing against that isn't going to solve the problem, and becoming an isolationist nation isn't going to solve the problem either.
Yeah, I actually agree with you strongly with that one. It's just that my worries kind of root is rooted in that logic. Sadly, it's because I've been listening to people like Shotgun Economics. I already told you about Money GPS. I've told you about the Rogue News crew and Logan Report. I think there's a couple of them. That side of that, and there's a lot of precious metals people like, and I'm not even going to them. And a lot of them, it's not that, a lot of them goes along saying, hey, just so you know, the American dollar is a value and what's it called, and they go through this cycle all the time. But unfortunately, there's actual reason to be relatively worried. Remember when I brought up the fact that, there's something I learned recently too, now that I think about it, and this one's about medicine. It's very bipartisan too. No one, I forgot the guys who talked about it. He's not even on the right too. He's someone on the left, socialist left.
Well, medicine in America is artificially inflated due to isolationism. In that respect.
If things get any tighter, because a lot of people stop circumventing the U.S. dollar. Sorry for going off on tangent. Yeah, so a lot of people are circumventing the U.S. dollar because of a mixture of that are the sanctions whether it be Iran, whether it be China, Russia. I think a lot of the Eastern and even the European countries are thinking of circumventing the dollar, and they haven't completely cut the cord yet, but a lot of people are going into the yuan, Jim Willie too. He's really good at this. And he talks about how the inflation caused by, I think, inflated markets using the derivative markets, which I still barely getting my head around, are kind of stressed. Not enough liquidity, not enough people have money, just a small, and basically they're just banks trading with each other and just trying to keep their system alive. And because we, as Americans, don't have much say in how the dollar is quite, created and used and whatever, it will directly affect us if people overseas say, hey, just, screw you, you can just, we have the Chinese yuan, we have cryptocurrencies, you have metals, etc. We'll just do our stuff over here. America, you could just play on your own until you broke. And that's basically how, and I actually found this out recently, which adds to this exact problem. Someone recently made a book, The Ending Tour of America, or America's End, I'm gonna forget about the book, but basically recently I heard a podcast from that guy, and he said something about us getting most of our medications from like the factories for medications comes from China, like the good majority.
Excuse me, hey Dusty, are you getting back to your?
Yeah, I'm back.
And it's not that, and because of our little spat with them right now, because of how big Big Pharma has a lot of stake in a lot of our the production that has to do with medication, a lot of that, and I mean a nice chunk. We're quite dependent on China, and they're very when it comes to information, isolationist. So if the products, let's just say, aren't up to snuff, it'll be hard to know. But that's a problem unto itself. The real problem is because of our antagonization of China and our heavy dependence on them for those medications. And I hear also fracking, Shell Oil is going to have a very bad sometime at some point. And because they don't make any money, they just suck it in. And I heard, and of course, there's the student loan, and there's three major bubbles. I heard this from Jim Willie. You know, I'm jumping between many different people, and I hear all of these problems. Oh yeah, and a meteor's coming, just so you know.
There's
problems.
Maybe there will be less identitarianism if a meteor comes.
Yeah, there's I hear in 2 years a literal giant f-off meteor is coming, and it will just end a continent. And if it goes on its direction towards us, I hope not. But I'm at this point just on the thoughts of, okay, I have 2 years to live, I guess. And if we stop global warming, and I heard this from a progressive podcast, funny enough, if we actually stop putting in certain gases in the air to a certain extent, we will actually get heated up to the point where humans can't sustain, and a lot of animals can't sustain themselves, mainly because of not just the damage that we did, just because there's maybe a cycle that we're in, I'll call it a solar cycle that we're in, that we're in an area that we're relatively not in a safe space when it comes to the sun. And if we stop actually pumping out all the, I guess they call them GMOs, we will actually be burned to a crisp. But at the same time, the GMOs are killing us.
You mean
the weather
CFCs?
fucking up with. The pollution.
GMOs are what they put in food.
My bad. The pollution.
That's okay.
The pollution. My bad. I'll just use that as a flat term. So that's everything included, whether it be planes or the conspiracy theories of the shit that they pour on. It just all that. Just think about all that as a flat pollution. If that stops to a certain extent, then we're screwed. But if that keeps going to a certain extent, we're screwed. And
so a progressive was saying that the global warming is good for our planet?
No, not a progressive. He had a person on the podcast who's a weather person. I think it was a progressive soapbox, Jamal Thomas. And Jamal Thomas was very distressed when he heard this. And this is just from just indicators. So it's not a perfect looking at the weather is not a perfect science. Like economics is not a perfect science. You could see some indicators, but you don't know if it will actually go that way. Is that from the evidence he brought up? Apparently, if they stop a certain level of pollution, we will be lit up like a candle. But if we keep it up, we'll poison ourselves to death. So, and the animals, etc. So we lose by a sixth diameter, lose. And the dollar
a little bit of pivoting here.
Yeah.
Let me bring up something. We're just gonna move to another topic since we've branched so far out that I can't even track it anymore. But
I tend to do that.
All right, so one of the biggest news of the week in the United States was the publishing, and this happened on the 11th, of Bob Woodward's book. Now, Ed, do you have any thoughts about this new revelation coming from Bob Woodward?
Well, the first observation is it's not a new revelation, right? We knew most of the details in this book obviously come as no surprise to anyone, right? That's number one.
I would say no surprise at all.
Is that book that you guys were telling me about last week?
Probably. It hasn't.
Yeah. I might have talked about it a little bit, but it hasn't come out since then. Now it's come out.
Okay. What's it called again?
Fear.
It's called Fear.
Okay.
and no way of knowing, but I'd say it's probably 95% true or 93% true, right? I mean,
yeah, it's much truer than what we've gotten before.
Right.
Like if you consider, there's been other writers that have talked about the inner workings of the Trump administration.
Bob Woodward isn't Omarosa, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Although she's got recordings, which is even more valuable. It could be even more valuable in some ways.
What's in Omarosa?
Omarosa is a woman who worked in his.
Oh, I didn't realize you were talking about a person.
And so he, say what you want about Bob Woodward, but there's almost nobody held in higher esteem in journalism, political journalism in the U.S. than Bob Woodward. So,
yes.
So it carries a lot of credibility, but if there's a criticism or it's that we know he's an incompetent, narcissistic, malignant scumbag. The evidence of that pours out every day out of his own Twitter feed. So,
politician. Like
what?
Oh, sorry. Which politician are you talking about? Like, there's a lot of people that has that.
He's talking about. I think he's talking about Trump. I think he's a benign scumbag.
He's benign.
Yeah.
If you live in Canada, he's benign.
He's a perfect, useful idiot. That's what I think Trump is. Perfect, useful idiot. He is not. I don't think him having an ideology, just has rich friends that not good people, and that's his view of the world. That's effectively it. Like, hey, I have some rich friends. We don't really care about anyone else. We just need to know how to make money and get our business rolling. And he's treating America like a business. That's basically it. Hyping up his workers in the Rust Belt. Like, hey guys, don't worry. Just keep on working. We will figure this out at some point. Wink. And just signing off on really complicated documents that I'm more than certain 300 other interest groups had to just put their stinky finger on. It's just it's just a mess.
What's your take, Dusty?
The president has a.
Dusty, I want to hear your take.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, we know we've gotten reports of what's going on in the Trump administration. We've gotten probably half a dozen books to rely upon. The problem with these half a dozen books is that the people reporting on these issues in the office don't have the same weight as Bob Woodward. And when you think of the name of Bob Woodward, you think of the resignation of Nixon. That is how powerful Bob Woodward is in the political world. Not saying that he's this political giant pulling everyone's strings, but he's looking to uncover the truth about things, and his truth has initiated a lot of political, I would say, chaos. If you're looking at he's pretty much covered all administrations, but Jesus, the stuff that's going on with this current one is just insane. And the weight of Bob Woodward's name puts a lot of credibility to the claims that people have made previously in their other books and investigations. So it's not just, these people are just crazy liars now. It's like, Bob Woodward is reporting the same things. It's hard to deny anything. It's hard to deny the credibility of Bob Woodward's reporting. It's like you haven't heard Trump call him an outright liar like you've heard him call everybody else that's investigated his doings. Well, Bob Woodward, if you call Bob Woodward a liar, you're going to be basically, people will think you're nuts.
Oh, so he'll just be crucified if he actually said that out loud. Wow, that's amazing. But at the same time, I'll have to look into this Bob Woodward. He sounds interesting. And
Well, I'll tell you why Bob Woodward specifically is interesting. Okay, there's a duo. It's Bob Woodward and Bernstein.
And
they were the key to cracking Nixon's involvement with Watergate. And the way they did that, they actually, there's a form of journalism that has become very prevalent today. It's called deep background. And what that basically means is using an anonymous source, but the source is not anonymous to the actual journalist. And what deep background means is to try to corroborate an anonymous source with other sources, and only speak it if you're able to do so. You can't just go off of what one person says anonymously. You have to back it up with other things that have been reported in other sources. But they call that deep background. Some people just call it using anonymous sources, but in reality, the source itself is not completely anonymous. It's not like somebody calling a police station and not giving their name. You know, you don't know who that person is, and you don't know that person's motivation. In the case of using deep background sources, the person, you know that person's name, you know how high they are in the office, and things of that nature. And he got, from what I've read, he's gotten like 200 hours of taped interviews. So
yeah, he has multiple sources on anything he writes. So,
Okay.
but again, Trump is going to call him a liar if he hasn't already.
Yeah, he calls everyone a liar.
yeah, that's
I
what
mean,
I'm
I'm
about
sure. I mean, you guys, like, especially you, Ed, and
he's not attacking Bob Woodward, he's attacking the anonymous sources.
Oh, okay.
No, he's
Okay.
attacking. He hasn't. Well, he's never going to read the book because he's never read a book. But you know,
Someone should make a picture book for him.
Kind of the larger issue is that the Republicans in Congress are unwilling to do anything about Trump. I mean, if you needed any more evidence that politicians are spineless, power-grabbing, you know, as long as we have our guy, everything else is irrelevant. This is completely demonstrated now with, I mean, Paul Ryan. The fact that they're in cahoots with Trump and don't go up to the White House and basically tell him he's got to clean up his act tells you all you need to.
I would say that's not entirely the case. And this is why I don't think the entire Republican Party is in cahoots, because if you just think about it, if that was the case, you know, Jeff Sessions wouldn't have recused himself. You know, Mueller's a Republican. What's his name? Comey was basically a Republican before he got fired.
We're talking about the people in his own administration mostly. I'm talking about
the party.
I mean, if the Republicans need to be destroyed in the upcoming election. That's the only thing that could possibly reign in Trump.
Okay, I mean, like you guys especially
that they are looking to get, like the tax bill. You know, Republicans wanted that.
I understand that.
They're trying to get as much as they can out of him before he completely implodes.
They're willing to get into bed with this guy. The only Republicans telling the truth about Trump are the ones who have already said they're not going to seek re-election.
Actually,
Ben Sasse and who's the other guy? It's Ben.
I know it was Rand, or I'm sorry, Paul Ryan.
No, not Paul.
Not seeking re-election.
I mean,
he's not seeking re-election.
I mean, you guys, especially you and Ed, and especially maybe you, Dusty, as far as I know anyway, I think you guys know a lot more about this than I do. And I totally agree that the Trump administration is a total clusterfuck, and I don't like Trump. But I'm just curious about, for one thing, I'm curious about whether you think that he is a malignant or a benign scumbag, Dusty. And I'm curious about why you think he's a malignant scumbag, Ed.
That's actually interesting. Oh, P.S. Ralph Nader was the guy I was talking about that I couldn't get the name out. I'm very sorry.
Okay.
Well, Dusty, you want to talk?
Why do you think he's malignant? Why do you think he's malignant? Like, do you think he's genuinely malicious in his ideas, or do you think he just doesn't know what the hell he's doing?
Or just kind of a dick?
I think it's a lot of both of those things. He's profoundly uninformed. I mean, that I don't see how that's not up for I mean, I don't see how anybody could argue how uninformed he is. I mean, you just have to read his Twitter feed. He doesn't understand how the government operates. He doesn't understand that his attorney general doesn't work for him. So
I think it's very easy to say that.
But
I don't think that the prosecutor come out after you. Like,
you're breaking
I
up.
don't think he understands that.
He certainly. I mean, how long of a conversation do you want this to be? I mean, I mean, it's as someone who's been following politics for 30 years. I mean, I can just give you my personal opinion, and who used to be a fucking card-carrying conservative who loved conservative politics and still admires parts of it, conservative politics a lot, actually, and certainly some of the smarter people who were involved in conservative politics. And I could name a few. This guy, it's not about his policy choices at all. I'm talking about the guy's character.
Oh,
So you're making ad hominem attacks?
It's not ad hominem.
So that's what those are called.
Oh, no, it is ad hominem. Yes, of course it's ad hominem. Yes.
So, like, that's my point.
That's
Of
what
course
those
it is.
are.
Someone's character and their actions. I mean, it's not completely irrelevant if someone has a lack of character.
Well, actually,
It depends on, like, how much their character affects their
He
decisions.
has no character, guys, and we all know it. If you
He's
follow,
intellectually lazy. I think what's up for
It's not
debate
just-
is whether he's going to destroy the world, which
It's
a lot
not
of people
just-
say.
it's not just that he's intellectually lazy either. Again, it's not his politics, and it's not the fact that he's uninformed, okay? Because he could have totally different politics and be uninformed and be an incredible leader of people in the administration, in the country. He could be a tremendous positive influence. The guy could have a third-grade education and be an amazing leader. Okay, those kind of people are born every day on the battlefields, when we had wars. That's not what I'm talking about. I am talking about the cynicism. He has lied 5,000 times in a little over.
Well, he's
How much?
he does the
That's
law.
the lies.
The draft
Hold on, let me finish.
I'll tell you.
Let me finish. The lie,
Okay.
and again, all politicians lie. There's no two ways about that. Okay, but we are talking about stark, fucking, bold-faced, ridiculous.
What's the most consequential lie he's told? Because I have 4 really consequential lies Obama told. I can't think of one consequential lie Trump told.
He doesn't. He was averaging about 4 lies a day, and now it's increased to 14.5 lies a day.
Okay, but why does the number of lies matter, though?
So how many people in your life lie to your face fucking 14 times a day? And would
I
you
don't know.
politicians.
would you respect them if they did?
Probably not. But what is
I
that?
don't
How is that
respect
relevant,
politicians in
though?
general.
So do you think things are going well in his administration? Do you think his leadership? do
Oh, that's
leaders-
what I wanted to get to.
No,
Actually,
I want you to say why you think he's malignant, though, Ed.
he's dude.
I think I can argue
It's such a
Ed's
grand
quite
problem.
better than Ed can.
It's such a big That's such a big question. I mean, what has he done that hasn't been malignant in his communications?
You think everything he's done has been malignant?
I'm asking you, what hasn't he done? What kind of
for example, like one example I brought up before when we've talked about this is that, like, if Hillary Clinton was elected president instead, for example, do you think that she would have I know it hasn't worked out as well as it could have, but do you think that she would have even made an effort to talk with Kim Jong-un?
Let me concede that I could easily see that if Hillary Clinton was president, we'd be just as divided today as if Trump was president. Okay.
To be fair, the difference between the two is one's gonna go like,
okay, but
secret. One's gonna like, I accidentally.
Here's the thing.
However, can I just finish? We could be just as divided in this blue-red dichotomy with Hillary. She is a polarizing figure, there's no doubt. And I'm not a Hillary fan. But what I can say about Hillary Clinton is that she is a experienced diplomat. Okay? She was a senator from one of the big...
Not a good one, though.
Yeah.
Okay, but look who we have now.
Wait, that
look who we have
betrayal.
now. He has a...
Oh, sorry.
I just don't think that Hillary Clinton would be any better at president as Donald Trump is.
Well, that shows how misinformed you are.
Why?
That shows how
you've
conceded that you're not informed on this issue, and you've just proved it by saying that.
What? That she's a neo?
That's just you saying your opinion. I know I'm uninformed.
It's
like my
but you're not give me reasons though, Ed. I'm looking for reasons.
Like,
just follow his Twitter feed, and there'll be 14 and a half reasons a day.
That's not. Those aren't reasons. That's how he tweets.
Remember, Twitter is like.
Why is it so relevant?
It literally drops your IQ by 3 when you start using Twitter for a long time. So I could pretty much assure that it doesn't matter who you are, if you're on Twitter long enough, you're going to not just lie, but you're going to be very inflammatory and sound like an idiot if you're trying to get good at it.
Well, yeah, but that doesn't excuse Trump being a dick all day long, though.
I'm just saying that that behavior.
Paul Manafort. Everybody around him has pleaded guilty to felonies. Okay, now I'm not saying.
I'll say, if any administration has a special prosecutor after him, people are going to be guilty of felonies.
Yeah,
that is a cop out, Dusty. That is a cop out. Okay,
that is not a cop out. Calling that a cop out.
We're talking about his campaign. Hold on a second. Hold on a second.
Calm down.
Hold on a second. We're talking about his campaign manager.
Have some of this, Ed.
His campaign manager. I mean, his campaign manager, guys. His campaign manager. All right, it's time to wake up. Okay, and not just say, "Oh, everybody does it."
Okay, but Ed, give me reason for his campaign.
It was his campaign manager.
Wasn't supposed to like. Hillary was literally supposed
his
to win.
His personal lawyer pleaded guilty, okay, to crimes, okay, which means they happened, okay. We're going to. I'm not even talking about. Forget about Russia. Okay,
I'm
not even talking about Russia.
In this.
Yeah, but
I'm talking about 5 or 6 or 7 people in his administration, and he's been there for a year and a half, have pleaded guilty to felonies. Okay,
but I'm talking about his political decisions are what would make him malignant, though.
No, that's not true. That's not. That is.
Well,
that's part of it.
Okay, because I think it's the people who surround him.
Does the head of an organization have leadership responsibilities? Yes or no?
Yeah. His organization is a clusterfuck. I said that.
Okay, and that's a good thing.
How much say does
no.
leadership?
Okay.
But that doesn't mean he's going to destroy the world or something either.
Did I claim he was going to destroy the world? I didn't.
No, I'm just wondering why you think he's malignant. That's all.
He's a malignant narcissist. Okay, he can.
Yeah. I think he's just an intellectually lazy narcissist and a selfish scumbag narcissist.
All right, lazy narcissist self. I'll sign off on that. I'll sign off.
Yeah, that.
Okay.
How much say? Oh, sorry. How much say does a person have, like, a president-wise? How much do they really have a say in the things they both sign off on, and the people that run?
They have a ton of say.
Is there like a dedicated groups to this? And remember, we're talking about neocons and neoliberals.
Yeah,
there's so many skeletons in
I'm talking about
a good example of what you just brought up, Mark, is the wall, because he wanted to build that wall, right? And that deportation bill, deporting people from Muslim countries, he wanted to do that too, but neither of those got passed.
Yeah, repeal and replace, that didn't get passed. They got worked around through some tax bills, but that was them being sneaky.
Yeah, he's accomplished almost nothing. He's going to get a Supreme Court justice in almost certainly, and that's something we should talk about. And again,
I was trying to bring up something earlier that the poor leadership on both sides. Here's the problem, like, there are qualities that a leader must have, and the greatest leaders in history, throughout the entire history of the world, their best strength was uniting people. Like, you think of any of the great leaders, they were able to unite desperate parts of the world, if we're talking about empires or things of that nature. I think right now in politics, it has driven down to the level of division, which is the sign of poor leadership.
Yeah.
Right? You want people to agree with you. You want people to come together and work on problems. This is not happening. And it was never expressed in the campaign either. Even Hillary went to division, a basket of deplorables. That's a divisive statement.
Yeah,
attacking the people who vote. That's what's going on now, and that's why both of them would have been poor leaders, because they're attacking their possible voters. Same thing that happened with Mitt Romney, attacking voters. If that's what's going to happen, then that's just a sign of poor leadership. And you remember his Trump's most recent rally, like, oh, if I get impeached, it's your fault. He's not even taking the blame for it. I know it's a semi-comedic expression on his part, but it's probably somewhat true as well. That's what his actual feelings are.
And what scares me is if President Trump is impeached, remember, Mike Pence is next, and Russia is remember, Russia's view can go quite fast.
Mike Pence obviously reads books.
Yeah, reading books is one thing, but being good at being a bad guy is different.
Do you think Mike Pence would be better than Trump?
As a bad guy, yes. As in a net bad for me.
Yeah, but
just look at this goatee.
Yeah, but what's the reason to be a bad guy, though? What's the good reason to be a bad guy?
Well, for me, to be fair, one, because I'm poor and black, and two, because I'd like to see I don't smoke, but I'd like to see a lot of the things that he wants to destroy. Wait, let me reword that. He wants a lot of the things that I'm for to be just wiped off the face of the earth. And two.
Well, okay, what are those things? Let's get into the detail. What are the things?
One of them is okay. I'm trying to make this as accurate as possible. So I'm gonna be doing a lot of pauses. Give me a second. Number
Yeah,
one,
let's just go like piece by piece and just
Yeah.
like kind of be direct
police
here.
reform. Let's start with that police reform. Like in a way.
I
that's
disagree
not-
because here's what I'll say. I'll disagree, Mark.
Wholesale disagree. But that might be the me like 2 years ago listening to the Young Turks. Who knows? But
Okay, so
also
here's
the weed laws.
super unprincipled
Yeah.
on a lot of things. So yeah, I
And
think
is he a neocon too? A neocon, my bad. Neocon.
he's a nothing. Trump is a nothing.
Yeah.
Trump is Trump.
Are you talking about Pence, Mark?
Yeah, Pence. Isn't
Okay.
Pence a neocon?
I don't know what Pence is. He's just a religious guy.
Yeah, it's just that like he will either let, because of the neocon thickness in the White House and the neoliberal, so I'll just call them neos. With all the thick neos in the House, with all the thick neos in the House, I don't see someone like him being pushed to their agenda, and neos just basically mean violent political persuasion here, or authoritarian political association here. And since we're in the brink of, like I brought up before, World War III, and one of the reasons that we dodged a bullet war-wise with Russia might, I don't know, so I'm going to use the word might heavily, be the fact that Mr. T's in the White House, even though I don't like him, and at all, actually, but because Mr. T's in the White House, I honestly, oh God, I hate saying this too. It might actually be a net positive in the most, oh God, disgusting, the most liberal terms, let's just say. It might be a net positive to make sure that if he's not impeached, the other half of the country won't go up in a, the ones with all the guns.
There's
So, Tiffy, and also we won't go into war with people outside the U.S. by the pushes of neocons and neoliberals alike, so all those neos, because I don't see Pence fighting back against those. And then, of course, our favorite friends of the earth, the bankers, the ones who's really in charge of the White House. So that's at least my take on it, because, like I said, I'm trying to read up on those backstories and those groups and what's it called, but it's a lot, especially when I'm trying to learn economics too. So I'm hearing these backstories piece by piece from people who are actively being engaged, like Sam Cedar on the left, or Progressive Soapbox on the left, and on the right, I listen to Rogue Money, who would talk about this, or the Daily something, I forgot the name, or some other people on that end. And remember, I try to get this all because I have a kind of a weird schedule between work and now, but yeah, work and just my attention span, and trying to make sure I learn this stuff and digest it right, so I won't be like a throbbing at the mouth identitarian on either ends of the spectrum, or just to be an overall monster pessimist or whatever.
Me too.
I'll say, here's the thing, I think here. Looking like, if Trump is removed, do we have to worry more or less about Pence? I really don't think so.
In a different way, yes. Like, Trump is a bad beast, but Pence is a different bad beast.
The most important thing to most people, especially people with families, is stability. So would introducing political factions that are further from the center increase or decrease stability? And my estimation would be increase in stability. So here's what I think. I think
Can you repeat what would?
Just more-
Yeah, you're breaking up a lot there.
Oh, I'm sorry. What did you want me to repeat, Ed?
You're saying are you saying if Pence came in, there'd be an increase in stability?
That's what I think.
Yeah, of course. Yes, agreed. Okay.
But won't the religious, the radical?
I don't like
religious
actually.
right.
Trump is more of a centrist than Pence is,
But not in his.
but at least
He is
yeah.
personal.
I don't think Trump is far right at all. He's like
No, but I'm sorry to interrupt, Dusty. Go ahead.
So,
no. The problem with Trump is instability. It's not his
When you have
place in the political spectrum. It's his just instability in regards to talking about policy, understanding policy, knowing how the government works, knowing what the Constitution is, which I don't think he has a full understanding, or why it's placed.
Probably not.
Can I give,
Go ahead, Ed.
I just want to give two examples to amplify that point. One is there are people literally taking stuff off his desk so he doesn't see it, because if he sees it, he's going to do something stupid. Okay. Now that's in Woodward's book. We can argue the veracity of it or not. I find it incredibly plausible based on the person we're talking about.
did you hear that deep state?
Who's excuse me. So
Sorry.
we got that. So that is hugely problematic when you have within your own administration, the people under you know what a fucking uninformed buffoon you are, who's so willing to make these drastic moves without any forethought or consideration. So they literally hide things from him. Okay, that's one example. The other one, well, there's two others. One of them is in Syria. He wanted to kill Assad, which, believe me, I'd love to wake up tomorrow morning and see in my Twitter feed that Assad got blown to pieces. But he called up Mattis and said, I want this guy dead after he did the chemical attack. Now, I understand his emotions there. I feel the same way. But Mattis said, yeah, we're not going to do that, and basically hung up the phone. Now, okay, so he flies by the seat of his pants. He's an incredibly dangerous person. Okay?
So that's an example of how he perhaps doesn't have as much power in some situations as a lot of people think he does.
That's my point.
Oh, yeah, okay, but then who has the power? Okay, then who has the power?
More people than just him, which is a good thing.
Yes, it is a good
Small system.
Okay,
You
just
still haven't made any point, Sam, Ed, about anything particular lie that's consequential, any particular policy he does that's dangerous, or a specific threat he says. You just speak in generality.
Well, there were, so if you remember in the Woodward book and whatnot, the policies that they removed from his view because he was going to cause something disastrous.
So the other example I wanted to give is he wanted to take all of our troops out of South Korea because it costs us a few billion a year to keep them there. Now, and he wasn't aware. He wanted to do this, and he wasn't aware that us pulling our troops out of South Korea would be a signal to the North Koreans that we're about to attack. That could trigger war on the Korean Peninsula. Okay, I'm just saying that I agree with Dusty 1,000,000,000 fucking % that although Pence is a Catholic fucking lunatic, okay,
I'm glad we agree.
that at least we know where he's coming from. He's an experienced politician. He wouldn't do the things like I just said, okay? So this guy should be terrifying to all of us, that people under him who we don't even know who they are feel it necessary to hide things from him because he's such a fucking clueless buffoon.
Yeah, he's definitely a clueless buffoon.
Real quick.
He's definitely.
Analogy.
Sorry.
Let me give you guys this analogy. So if we're going to look in Game of Thrones,
oh yeah,
Trump is Joffrey and Pence is Cersei.
That's a good analogy.
That is a really good analogy. Yeah, that's
Joffrey
actually
doesn't know what
No.
the thing is. Cersei, although I guess people would say she's evil, she knows how to play the game.
Yeah, so you're saying that Cersei would be better than Joffrey?
Well, obviously, in the book, that is the case.
But
I thought you and Ed were just agreeing with each other earlier when you said Pence would be worse.
the thing about
No.
Pence would be better.
Pence would be better. Okay. Why would he be better?
It would be enough
I think he'll be a
stability.
No. The thing with stability, though, is, and I hate bringing up this point as well. And actually, I hate defending the guy too, but this is most of the reason why I'm like, there is a needle of skepticism that I have with the narrative on Trump being well, I think he's absolutely bonkers, to be fair, but bonkers in the way that our important friend from the Glasses clan is also nervous about him. Like most of that. Okay, how am I going to bring this point up? All right, first, remember he is not a born politician. In other words, he's not a. I want to bring a couple of points in. One, he's not a born politician. What I mean by that is he's not of the group. He's not of the original group that would normally be in the office, not a when I mean Stanford guy, I mean he's not a guy that would normally be invited in that group. He's not been prepped for the kind of stuff he'll be dealing with. That's one thing. And all that baggage that has to go with that. That's number one. So he's an outsider, regardless of whether he would be on the liberal side or the neoliberal side or the neoconservative side. Two, it's not obvious to me that a president, and I mean president blanket, like blanket statement, as a president has as much power as you think. Because remember, we have one outside influential powers that if they're, let's say, touched the wrong way, and even if they're a net negative for U.S. citizens or hell, global citizens at that, if they're touched the wrong way, they'll just say, oh, okay, we'll just not do this and fuck like half of your country. And also remember that the information agencies that most, I think they've proven themselves to be untrustworthy at this point. I'm not saying everything they do is untrustworthy. I'm saying maybe the top bracket. I think of it like the Catholic Church. That's how I see the information agencies. There's something bad in there. I don't know what it is. I don't think it's everyone in there. I think a lot of them are good working, hardworking, on duty people, but I see from the little bits of spots of information I'm getting out of them, it's just what they put in front of Trump. I'm pretty sure it's doctored in a way for an emotional response that somebody who is not of the normal upbringing of someone that would get into the office under normal circumstances will be able to act rationally upon the whatever plan they're trying to get through.
Hey, Mark, I have something I think you want to think about.
I'm sorry, it's a lot.
One thing I know that you're very concerned with, and you have repeated it just a couple times, is World War III. We've heard you seem to be very concerned. And I know if you pair that up with, okay, Trump doesn't have that much power or a president doesn't have much power. Well, here's the thing that people need to consider. Domestically, the president doesn't have much power. They have an extreme amount of power on the foreign policy.
Yeah, okay.
Trump can launch a missile at anybody he wants without anybody's approval.
With information he gets.
But he can do it at a whim if he wants to. He doesn't have to consult Congress. He doesn't have to get votes on anything.
He could just don't like that.
Yeah, it's his decision.
The fact that the president has that power, not
He has,
just
he has life or death.
I don't like the president having that power because
It's
I
fucked
think
up
that's what
for
screwed up to
anyone.
begin with.
It's fucked up for anyone to have that power, and particularly Trump, which I totally agree with when people say that.
That's actually getting to my greater point. Actually, it's like,
but it's
a lot of people have in like different interests that are connected to many different things that I don't completely understand. But I know one thing: some of those interests don't have, let's say, a place called Iran's best interest at heart, or maybe a place called Syria, or maybe a place called Russia, or maybe like because they're going against a stable system that was feeding them money or feeding them power or influence or whatever of a certain asset, people, whatever persuasion you could think of. And they need to convince the president to do something, but they need to sell him on it by making him panic. In other words, make him worried about the children or something like I'm pretty sure one of the statements Trump made at some point for bombing, a reason for bombs because of a gassing on children. I think using that little, what's it called, and if you're a president that wasn't prepped, that this is what I was trying to get at before. If you weren't prepped from being a lawyer, because that's what most of our presidents were, to be fair, but lawyer, you don't have the kind of fortitude a lawyer would have when getting I think document-based information of that ilk, if that makes sense, of that importance and ilk, and if there's manipulation within those documents and ilk, and the right amount of skepticisms for that, you know, and what to act. And because he's surrounded by neocons, and it wouldn't be any better if it was any kind of neos, whether it be cons or libs, libcons or neocons, doesn't matter. Because he's surrounded by neocons, which were appointed to him because of whether it be because banksters have a big role in getting a president because funding. Let's just be flat out about it. Just straight up the funding needed to get this machine going. Like all of these are interconnected problems is what I'm trying to get to say, that even if it, and I guess because Trump is a Twitter monster too doesn't help. So giving you kudos, my glasses clan friend. It's just, okay. How am I going to finish this off?
Why don't we?
Yeah.
We'll just keep it high level, not trying to dive too deep into the underpinnings of things.
It's a thing of, I don't see it as just being as spastic, and yes, he's getting old. I could see a lot of that, a good chunk of that is being spastic. And
there's one point you made that I wanted to address because I thought it was really important. You said that a lot of presidents have had law training, and
not all of them, but of that ilk, of that.
Not all of them, but many of them.
Yeah.
But if you're going to pair that as well, one of the things you learn in law training is ethical training, and it's obvious that Trump lacks any really clear sense of principled ethics.
Yeah,
I have to give you that. I have to give you that one. He's treating America like a business, and that has its cons and its pros. I put cons first for a reason.
His business, like the face of what he was not really what he was. Like most of America sees him as the guy on The Apprentice. But the funny thing about The Apprentice is that the office of The Apprentice, like I remember I don't know what it was, but I was listening to a podcast about some of the producers from the show and how they had to completely redo his office because it looked like shit. and they're like,
that's the worst part.
Well, yeah, it's what Americans see as his success is very much a facade. Like even the helicopters he was flying, like he was going through bankruptcy then, and he like lost the helicopter shortly, like 2 weeks after the show. He was like in supreme debt in that point in the
Maybe that's why
show.
he's been hired to be president, because he's good at getting out of bankruptcies, and America's bankrupt at this point.
And he wants to make money.
Yeah, he wants to make money out of the. But that's actually one of the theories, actually, that he was.
Yeah, but
tainted by
still,
certain
no
people because
American
of
bank,
bankruptcy.
no American bank will give him a loan. That should tell people
Oh,
something.
wow, are you serious?
Yeah, no American bank will give him a loan.
That's amazing to me.
All of his
And
current loans are from foreign banks.
Which actually gives him incentive not to just nuke everybody, but I don't know. Maybe I'm just being too optimistic there.
Well, that's how poor. That's how poor of an investment Trump is. That American banks will not invest in Trump or loan him money. So, a lot of people don't know this stuff. They just think what The Apprentice. Yeah, they just think what they see on The Apprentice is true. But anytime you inject Hollywood into a process, they're going to sell you something completely fake.
Yep.
To be fair, I had like inklings of that, because I heard, like I said, the very first introduction to politics was the Turks, and they bought that up like heavily. Like, just so you know, this guy's been bankrupt so many times, and I even heard from people on the right that thinks of like on his bandwagon that don't quite like the fact it's him, but glad that it's not Hillary. Those types. That says, yeah, he was probably like, you know, people backed him because he's good at navigating the fact that he's in debt and the fact that America is about to bottom up. And like I said, this is one of the, I'll call it conspiracy theories, I think, about him. Like the fact that he's able to like somewhat stay alive between the crazy amount of debt he has and knows how to navigate through that, or maybe still keep something resembling something afloat in that situation is the reason why he was put into office. But at the same time, the big square is absolutely insane. So I like not even a third believe that, not even 25%, maybe 15%, not even probably 2, but like I said, I hear enough where it's not a flat, this guy is crazy, this guy's what's it called into it. I just see it as a elephant or a monkey in a china shop. I'm not going to give him a gorilla. Gorillas are too cold. So
yeah, another one of the scary things about Trump, like just going about, when you think of Trump, I don't think of a guy who spends hours over deciding on some really important decision. It seems like all of his decisions are completely based off of his emotions at the time.
Oh, I heard something actually. Sorry about this. I've heard something recently that was very interesting.
Can you let Dusty finish, please? Dusty, can you finish? Can you let Dusty
finish, please? Dusty, sorry about that.
Dusty?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was just going to say, we can't expect Trump to weigh. It doesn't seem like he weighs thoughts or even decisions very heavily. Like, he's very impulsive to speak what's on his mind before he's made any type of final decision. So, and it doesn't really seem like he ponders and really draws on his knowledge of history, which he doesn't have, his knowledge of precedent, which he doesn't have.
Or anything.
Well, he has knowledge. It's just not a whole lot of it is applicable to his job.
Trump's role, really quickly, is just basically to do PR for Trump. He handles all the files and all the legislation to other people. He just does PR for Trump all day. That's his real role in this stuff, not to actually be making more than just, like, he picks 3 policies, reps them a bunch. Everything else is outside of his hands. Like, he doesn't do that. It's not his job. He's PR.
Well, if you're talking about domestically, that's largely true. If you're talking about foreign policy,
PR for himself,
not so much.
The president's job is PR that's news to me.
That's what Trump's turned it into. He's handed over the
you're
work to
right.
the admin. and he sits there and just does PR for the Trump machine, and that's probably the best thing he could do. Like, I don't want Trump making policy decisions. I want him to do a couple of his main planks. Beyond that, let the other adults run the show. Like,
well, that's the only way it's going to work.
Yeah,
that is the only way it's going to work, and that's how it's working currently.
I was about to say that's what's happening. That's true.
But typically, like when you vote for something, that's not what you sign up for.
Of course not. He's supposed to be a leader, for God's sakes. I mean, just think about like FDR or Reagan or Lincoln or Jesus Christ, even George Bush or anybody, even Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter, who is a buffoon, okay, a lovable, harmless buffoon, put what are the things you put on the roof to grab sunlight? I'm just blanking on the word.
Solar panels?
Solar panel. He put solar panels on the White House in like 1977. All right. He was trying to push that agenda back then. I mean, he never sent troops anywhere. Again, that could be a bad thing. I'm just saying that, like, I don't know. I'd like to, again, my personal view is we should just move on, because once you start talking about Trump, this is what happens.
Yeah.
And look,
I think it's just a good thing that he doesn't make that many policy decisions.
That's mostly, that's actually one of my thoughts on it.
The Congress passes laws, right? But through leadership, if you read about LBJ, for example, he would have the leadership of the House and the Senate up to the White House every day, trying to get his agenda through, working with
Congress. Because LBJ was an actual hustler, you know. Like Donald Trump is not a hustler.
How many?
He says he's like this great negotiator, but
how many sleepless nights has he had in the White House worrying about the weight on his shoulders?
Probably none.
Exactly. Not probably none. Fucking guaranteed to be none. Because if you lie 14 and a half times a day, it doesn't matter. He's not weighing any of this.
I mean, he probably lies way more than 14 and a half times a day.
Whatever. I mean, look, he will go down.
I'm not so concerned about the lies, because to me they're not lies. It's just, to me, he's not informed.
Come on.
Yeah, a lot of that is just ignorance.
No way.
A lot of it is ignorance, though. I'm saying most of the lies are him not being capable of answering the question, so he just says some random bullshit thing.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
All right.
He heard from somebody.
But some of them are very intentional lies meant to mislead. They're not just bullshit. He does both. You know, he does both.
Yeah.
But Dusty,
so if you guys had a way better president, then that would be awesome. But you don't. So it's good that he doesn't make many policy decisions.
He has not been tested at all. Okay, this is what we have to remember. And again, I'm not one of these people who says he's not my president and fuck the third of America. You know, no, I never want to be like that. He's the president. I want him to succeed. I want him to somehow grow as a human being and become a fucking human being. And he has said some recently some nice things. And you know, I hope that improves and shows some leadership skills and some magnanimity. I couldn't say it, but you understood it. And I hope all that happens. But to put lipstick on a pig, I mean, give me a fucking break, man. Come on. I mean, you have to be born yesterday. I mean, it's just impossible. I mean,
it's more like, instead of putting lipstick on a pig, I'm just trying not to put putting more mud and gunk on the pig before I see what the pig actually looks like.
Yeah, why don't we?
Like, it's still
Dusty, any other topics? My view.
Yeah, sure. Let's see.
I was asking Dusty.
Oh, okay.
Something that's not complicated.
Yeah.
We're not going to talk something that's real simple. All right.
Anime, manga?
No, not everybody here is a anime or manga head. I want to see what books have people been reading lately?
Oh. What was I know I've
Andrew, you're a voracious reader. What have you been reading?
Yeah.
Andrew.
I just finished that. I forget what it's called, but that 7th book in the Wheel of Time series that I was talking to you about, Dusty. And I also am reading this book called Criminal.
Path of Daggers. Path of Daggers, maybe?
No, I think that's the one after the one I just read. Not sure, but I also read, and that one was really awesome. As I was telling Dusty about, it's a fantasy series for anyone who doesn't know about. That's really awesome and has lots of awesome stuff. And I think there are like 10 books or something like that in the series, maybe. And I've also been reading 13. Right, yeah.
Beast.
And I've been reading this book called Criminal Masterminds about apparent criminal masterminds throughout history. That is also really interesting.
Actually, I've been rereading The Wheel of Time. I actually just finished the first book again. And actually, I have a recommendation for you, Andrew, but I don't want you to check this out yet, because there is this podcast that has been covering the series. It's actually really, really good.
Oh, cool.
But since you haven't read the whole series, I would not recommend it to you because there's a lot of spoilers. But
okay.
yeah, the podcast is called Wheel of Time Spoilers. But they actually go through all the books chapter by chapter, and they kind of dissect like a lot of the different scenes and concepts, and it's really interesting for people who have read it through once. But yeah, I really recommend that to you once you actually finish the series.
Oh, cool. That sounds awesome.
Well, another book I've been reading is I think it's called The World Between Us or some crap like that by
what is it about?
Ta-Nehisi Coates. I don't recommend this book to anybody unless they're just wanting to see what certain people think about. It's basically, I don't know how to explain it, but it's too We Was Kings for me. I don't know. Are any of you familiar with Ta-Nehisi Coates?
I'm not.
Okay.
People wanted Sam to have him on the podcast, and Sam wouldn't do it.
I really dislike that man from what I've been exposed to.
Well, I just say, I'm exposing myself to his writing. I don't like it. It's very much like, I don't know, man. I don't. It's like, okay, blame everybody else about our problem type of book. It's not helpful, I don't think, to anybody. It's just like, here, white people, look at what we're struggling with, as if every black person in the world struggles the same.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's kind of like that kind of book. So I've been going through it, and I was like, I just pretty much shake my head most of the time. I'm just like, no wonder people are being led to believe that everybody else is the cause of their problems. It's like, this is a narrative, I think, that's all too common.
Here.
Yeah.
Did you hear about Jonathan Hyde's new book?
Yeah, I'm going to buy that when I get the chance. Very big fan of Haidt.
I didn't know
his
he
work.
has a new book.
Yeah, he's just on Sam's podcast. I'm only halfway through it.
I'm going to have to check that out then, because I know Sam doesn't like Haidt.
Sam Cedar?
No, they've totally repaired that, and apparently at the end, and again, I just heard on Twitter, I haven't listened to the whole thing yet. They had a love-in at the end. Did you listen to it, Shane?
Yeah, I listened to it at the airport the other day. I just wish Sam would read The Righteous Mind.
Yeah, me too.
Did you see Dawkins' tweet the other day about The Righteous Mind?
Yeah,
Dawkins.
I did. I saw
Yeah.
it. He fucking sang the praises of it, how well it was written.
He did. If Sam would just read like that book, especially with the Jordan Peterson debates, if you actually understand.
Because he had him on the podcast like a year ago. He probably read it when they had him on a year ago.
I never see any evidence from any of Sad's podcasts that he reads any of the books of the people who come on. He mentions sometimes having started them, but I never see him quote the theories. I never see him speak to it. And basically the whole point of Haidt's book is that you have this model where you have beliefs, communities, and actions, and these interplays between all three. And he just never talks as if that's a way to understand how ideology or religion works. So it's like,
what's that new Haidt book called?
It's about
Coddling of the American Mind.
Say it again, buddy.
Okay.
What's it called?
The Coddling of the American Mind.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, he co-wrote it with another guy. But wait, Shane, did you listen to Sam's first podcast with Haidt? I've listened to it.
I listened to it twice. Yeah, it was. I
just can't remember it. But this new book is great because because Haidt takes on the fucking how we're coddling this I generation or Z generation, whatever it's called, and that they're incapable of resolving conflict and all the rest of it. I mean, so he and Haidt are really have totally made kissed up, and I think Sam really admires a lot of the work that he does. I mean, Haidt's an interesting guy, I have to say. I really enjoy the podcast. I haven't gotten through it all yet.
Well, here's the thing. It's like Haidt is still in the academic space. He's an academic.
Yeah.
And Sam is not. He's not on the campus. He's not doing research. He's not doing science. So I think he needs to rely on people that are actually still doing these things instead of kind of hunkering down and, not evolving their views about things.
Yeah.
Sam and Dustin, I have a question for you. What's a good place to start? Because I know you guys are good on books and stuff. What's a good place to start on Western, and Eastern philosophy to just like learn bottom up? Because I don't have a teacher, so I'm trying to audiobook this, and I don't know where to start. It's like I dipped into like Nietzsche. I dipped into another guy. I think his name his name's with an M. He's the most like well known, like one of the two most well known. And I'm trying to get into Eastern too. What's a good way to start with like philosophy and stuff? Just a quick side note.
Well, Andrew would probably be better at answering that because he actually reads philosophy books. I don't. But there are podcasts that do a great job at covering the history of philosophy and the different philosophers that have come and passed. One of those podcasts is called Philosophize This. So it's basically going through all the most important philosophers in history, basically informing you of what their philosophy was and informing about like the counter arguments to their philosophy at that time. But it's a historical philosophy podcast. You want to just kind of get the gist of what, the old philosophers said in a very short and understandable way. That's a very good podcast to check out. Thanks. As far as like philosophy, I do not read philosophy books because I don't know. I just like it's hard for me. Like philosophy books are hard to read.
Yes.
Yeah, for me at least. Yeah, for me at least, they're just kind of difficult to read. But if you're doing philosophy, I don't think listening to it is the best way to go because you kind of just have to mull over each line and kind of think about what they're really trying to say to you. I don't know, man. Like philosophy, sometimes I just zone out. Like when I was reading Atlas Shrugged, like, goddamn, that John Galt speech is like the most boring asinine thing I've ever listened to. And that's considered philosophy. It's like, Jesus Christ, this is not what I'm going to torture myself with. I'm pretty sure Ayn Rand is the worst example I can give you. But there's probably some other philosophers out there that are readable, easily digestible. But I don't read them too much because I don't know, maybe my brain just doesn't get them. I let other people filter the philosophy in a more digestible manner. Like I'll watch YouTube videos that, like who?
Like Jordan Peterson. That's how I got into it. Like
No,
seeing his
Jordan Peterson doesn't understand philosophy. Do not follow Peterson for philosophy.
No. That's how I started.
I disagree with that statement.
His thing first, not his. I didn't see him through the controversy. I saw him through his lectures. I heard about the controversy later, and then I look in different places afterwards. But yeah.
Well, Peterson's not a good look at contemporary philosophy. Like if you're looking for historical philosophy, he's a pretty good look. Contemporary, not so much, because he completely relies. For contemporary philosophy, he completely relies on people who aren't good at philosophy. So if we're talking about Stephen Hicks, which is 99% of what Jordan Peterson gets his postmodernism knowledge on, Stephen Hicks is bullshit.
He doesn't understand Derrida or Foucault at all.
I'd like to make two quick points. One, although he might oversimplify postmodernism, I've listened to a lot of pragmatist philosophy like Reid, the American pragmatists. That's the philosophy he actually advocates. So in that realm, he's very solid. And I've listened to a lot. I've done a lot of follow-up in that ocean. So maybe
I agree.
So he's good at that. The second thing I'll just quickly say about Eastern philosophy, I've got about halfway through the Bhagavad Gita, the Hindu scripture. If you read that with explanatory notes, it really drills into you the spirit and the kind of mentality behind the Hinduism, which is basically you just have your caste, your role. That's what you stick to. You can complain about it, but you got to do it anyways. So if you read maybe even a third or half of that, I found it to be, it really kind of explains a lot about the basic idea there. So that might be worth your time.
For sure.
Okay.
And also the Tao Te Ching is a good book for Taoism.
Yeah, but we don't have Bolelli or Isaiah here. They're like, he wants to talk about it. I don't know too much about Eastern philosophy.
My advice would be even less informed than you guys, which would be. I mean, I did read some ancient philosophers back in the day. I don't know how much memory there is of that, but Wikipedia. I mean, you can get so much out of their write-ups on philosophy are fucking dense. I mean, as willing as you are to get into that dense material, it's all there. So that's the resource I use when I want to understand.
And if you want to get more into Western philosophy, you could, if you want to, you can go all the way back to the ancient Greek philosophers like Socrates and Plato, and you can.
Great.
Yeah, so great. And you could get into the Stoics and the Cynics if you want to, and if you want to get into the more like American Western philosophy, you could get into people like John Locke and Thomas Paine and people like that. But you like reading several different philosophers is a good idea.
That's why Wikipedia is such a great resource for that. Because the material is so dense and they write so much. And like Dusty was saying, it's philosophers write up. They don't write down. They are very fucking dense. And even Sam Harris's books that were based on philosophy are fucking dense.
Okay.
And
I'll keep note. Yeah. Have you heard of Destiny? Because he had a couple of people on that were like, because he was got intrigued about this. One of the people that also got me interested in philosophy more lately, because more recent development is like there's a podcaster named Destiny, and he does call-ins and really long podcasts similar to this, but he like plays a game while doing it, so people have something to look at. And basically, more recently he'd been putting on like he debates a lot of people, and he's a very strict debater, if that makes any sense. Like somebody that's like on the book, does this point, this point, this point, and this point, and he bought in basically people from schools of moral philosophy. I forgot the thing. I think it's a moral realist, I think. And it was very interesting. That's basically how and that's kind of how I try to get myself to read like the new things that are very complicated. Is like I stroke that intrigue until it gets nice and hard, and then I'll finally just look for it. So that's kind of how I. That's kind of how I do. I try to do that over time, though. It takes a while, but it like.
All right, so here's my advice to you. You have to treat philosophy a lot like history, because there's always a progression of the ideas and how do these ideas change over time. So there's a lot of underpinning ideas in contemporary philosophy that are based off of ideas that are supposed to be known. So if you don't know those underpinning ideas,
if you want to know
those underpinning ideas, you're in a lot of trouble. So that's why I suggest, there are podcasts that break these down, and they go straight through history, breaking down into these philosophers, what their thoughts are, all of that. And I do highly recommend Philosophize This. It does go through philosophical history, and it outlines all of these philosophers' stances and thoughts, their individual philosophies. Like he even covers Rand. It's really funny. But yeah, you should. It's a really popular podcast too, so it's pretty well produced.
Yeah, I have it on the screen now. Looks interesting. So
it's very well.
Yeah, so after this, I'm probably going to listen to like the one Australian and Mark, Communist and Capitalist, and then I'll probably I'm going to probably end in anxiety for like the day or to like the next few days. I'm going to go look into those four. And this is another problem I've been having with books per se, because there's so many good books with nice, dense information that's made well. Like I bought up a couple of times the what was it, that accursed name? Don't leave me now. Okay, one you guys brought up on the philosophy end of things. There's it's a very famous one, and most people read it first. Plato. There we go. Plato. There's a book I was meaning to read. There is I'm planning on finishing Jonathan Haidt's book. Like I'm like most of the way there, but not quite done. There's also the book about it's finding the time to just dig deep into them, because I listen to audiobooks, and it's a hear it in a very good, deep manner to hear it, if that makes sense, and not just kind of passively listen to it. Because I understand the value of what's being said on those, on the audiobooks. Like one of the only book I actually that I remember right now, like this second that I finished that I actually had agency, is Rich Dad Poor Dad, which you guys should read at some point. I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and it was enlightening. And it took me a while because of how I am. I walk a lot. It's a compulsion at this point. And it's like, and then you hear the sounds of the cars passing by. You hear what's it called? You just need a park to just kind of walk past, or if you have work or something, and it kind of gets in the way of listening, like truly listening to the audiobook. Have you ever had that problem? Like that's what's.
I think the problem is
most of my books.
Like I know exactly what you're talking about. One thing to consider is that whenever you read a book and finish it, don't expect to grasp everything, and you might actually have to reread the book. I've done that I'm not ashamed of saying I've had to go back through a book to understand it better. And that's especially true for me when it comes to audiobooks. Like for instance, I got through the whole Wheel of Time series on audiobook, and then now I'm going through it by reading, and I understand so much more just by actually reading the text. Maybe it's just the way I learn things, but never discount the ability to just go back into a book and read it again. Like sometimes you do have to do that. Sometimes you might have to read a chapter 2 or 3 times to fully grasp what they're talking about. So, sometimes you can't just read a book and then expect to absorb all the knowledge that the book has. And also, make note of also, usually in the more academic books, are always going to have citations. And if you want to delve more deeper on a topic, you could also check out the citations that they're drawing from. That's always another good idea as well.
Walking while listening also is good because having the physical, at least for me, kind of creates a baseline of calm, and then I can really just kind of lose myself listening. Whereas if I'm sitting there, I tend to get distracted if I try to listen to philosophy. I put some lectures, and there's a modern course where the guy starts with like not the oldest philosophy, but he really kind of goes through just past the medieval to the modern. You might only need to do about half of it, but it kind of gives you a baseline of kind of some of the key people. I found it useful. I listened to it the first time about 6 years ago, and it's been a nice touchstone as I've kind of slowly kind of dived in on individual people since then. So my 2 cents.
You put a link on this video
in the chat.
On this
I put an overview course, and then this Dan Robinson guy who I really like. He does a big thing on Hume and a big thing on Kant. And if you listen to The Righteous Mind,
Kant, yes, I'm listening to Kant too.
Yeah, if you listen to The Righteous Mind, he gets a lot of the stuff that Haidt talks about when he was trying to conceptualize what model he was going to use to help people make decisions. He actually talks about some of the same issues. So it was kind of interesting for me to listen to it at the same time because Haidt, I think this 3 community beliefs and actions relationship that he creates with your elephant metaphor. Plus, you got the epistemology of Haidt, of Hume, and Kant. By the time you throw it all together, I think you start to get a pretty decent view of how to actually make sense of the world, in my opinion. But it's a really nice baseline for your epistemology and ontology. So see what you guys think of it if you have any time.
Oh, and just in case, just Gmail it to me, markben93@gmail.com. Like the link.
Yeah, and another thing you might do when you're visiting difficult material or very complex material. One thing I like to do is pair a book with Cliff Notes or something else that analyzes what you're reading. Like, for instance, like I'm going through Wheel of Time again. I'm pairing that with a podcast that goes through every single chapter. Like each episode is like 45 minutes dedicated to discussing a chapter and what's in it. So you can see if you can find those type of resources that actually do an analysis of what you're reading to get a better understanding of what's being said in the print. I know there's a lot of resources that are really difficult reading, like James Joyce and things. But if you can find it, like analysis of what you're reading, particularly it's a chapter by chapter analysis, that's a great way to pair your reading so that the information really soaks in.
For sure.
Yeah, that helps because I actually have a similar method, even though I don't have normally don't use physical books on me. Like with complicated things like that I know I won't have much time to dig deep in the way I'd like to. I normally look for the most people that has a more teaching someone that has whether it be on purpose or not, has a more YouTube channel that has a more teaching approach, if that makes sense. So that's what I do for whether it be that's how I choose the podcasts I go in, whether regardless of the persuasion, or or political persuasion, or even just technical persuasion. So like I'm trying to learn trading, but I know that I'm not good at statistics, and my attention span is as a cat with a feather in their face, and is just as bad as that basically. But I try to like use my existential agency to kind of focus in on like people that at least have like a tone of responsibility, if that makes sense, and that will go and try to get you to be responsible with your money. Like that's kind of my, like if we're talking about trading, which is something crazy complicated, but at the same time I'm learning how money works through this. I'm learning how like economics works, like kind of like, but not like, but I don't got the meat, if that makes sense. I don't have the meat.
Yeah.
Like what you would get from going deep from a historical standpoint. And that's and I want to go on the historical standpoint with all these subjects that we've been talking about, whether it be the politics with Trump, whether it be the economics with what's called with left and right. If we're talking about trading, if we're talking about I said philosophy, right? So I guess just history in general, and the different viewpoints, and then just coming to grips with the fact that I won't be able to get as like hearing like a good book is saying to me is like I can't justify listening to this in this current situation because there's too many damn cars going past me, and noise or etc. And that frustration that kind of comes in, and then I leave the book for a couple of months or days, and I was like, oh yeah, that's right, I was reading that, and then I go back to it and rinse repeat. I'm trying to learn Chinese and Japanese too because I'm a glutton for punishment. MBTI, which Myers-Briggs, is something I'm trying to learn. I'm learning bits and pieces of each, but I don't got the meat. I don't got that history that makes the muscle, the meat, the thing that gets everything sticking. Even the arguments we had like earlier today, earlier in the podcast, most of it was mostly just me trying to put in, like, I learn better through conversation, if that makes sense. So it helps structure the mass amount of information I'm not sure about in my head that I've been hearing, and I'm able to kind of organize it through talk. And that's why my Glasses Clan friend and gave wonderful points that I'm glad I heard, and I've learned something new thanks to it. Even though it was a bit of a spat that I wasn't necessarily a part in, but still. Or the philosophy thing, like, yeah, I need that, and I'm very thankful for that. That link. I'm going to actually put this up top here so that I see it. But yeah, good, it has philosophy too, because I put on favorites on top of the screen right there so that it could just kind of show me that it's there so that I don't forget it's there, and I forget it and it's gone from my mind. So yeah, and then if we're talking about even economics in general, or people, psychology, there's so many things that I want to tackle, but even with that, like while I wasn't having a job or while I am having a job, like the time management is so hard.
The way of a mixed mental artist is hard.
Damn straight.
Yeah. I would say just try not to bog yourself down on thinking that you have to master all these subjects, because it's pretty much impossible. Nobody can master this many subjects without being extremely exceptional. I'm not saying don't pursue it, but when you grind on a subject and stay consistent for a long time, then you'll become a natural at that subject. It's just, I've been closely related to the subject for a long time. It's just when you're pulling at a lot of high-level concepts that you don't have the real underground knowledge, or at least the basis and foundations on, it's going to be difficult. Like, you don't want to, like, for instance, you can't go become a drummer and then want to be like the best drummer in the world. Well, that's a hard, I'm not well versed on drumming. Okay, so you can't go and be a guitarist and expect to play Stairway to Heaven perfectly when you just start. Like, you're gonna learn some boring ass shit in the beginning. You're gonna learn a happy birthday and like 3 chord songs, and they're gonna be super difficult to play. And you're like, oh man, I really want to play Stairway to Heaven solo, you know, but I don't want to have to learn all these scales and chords and stuff. But that's what you got to do. You got to grind and put in the time, learn the very fundamental small concepts, and once you do that, like, the very high level concepts become accessible.
You don't get your black belt as a mixed mental artist until you spend a lot of time mastering the various mixed mental arts, and it takes a lot of time and effort.
That's actually one of my
so I say
theory, funny enough.
Yeah, don't be discouraged. I would say, like, it's the fundamentals might be boring, but they're also necessary.
Hey, can I ask a question to the group?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
If you could travel if you could time travel, would you travel to the past or the future, and why?
The future, because any point in the past that I'm in, I would probably be killed. Yes.
And you couldn't speak the language of the past either.
What's that?
You wouldn't, even if you went to England in 1500 or 1300, they wouldn't even understand a word you're saying, and vice versa.
Oh yeah.
Well,
It could also be the case if you went in the future. Like, what if people start speaking in emoji and we're like, what the fuck are these people talking about?
That's true. I'll stipulate that you'd be so you can travel to the future or the past for one day, and I'll stipulate that you can communicate. Would you?
It depends on what kind of future we're talking about. Like, it could be a utopia or a dystopia or anything in between.
Why do you always complicate?
Well, here's what I'll say on this. I'm always going to go in the future because I can capitalize on future knowledge when I come back to the past.
So you guys would travel.
That's a good answer.
So you would travel to the future, Dusty. Shane, what would you do?
Oh, I'd probably go to the past, man. I'm just so obsessed with the Roman Empire. Yeah, I just want to learn. I can see any of that part with everything done up with the marble on the outside, everything painted. Talk to a stoic or a soldier or a general. I just shit my pants, man. I would just love it. Like, if I could see the Romans fighting the Gauls, forget about it. I would just that'd be amazing.
And I bet you'd love the ability to be I don't know if you'll know this reference, but be able to be everywhere but nowhere. That's an ability from a Hellsing Ultimatum someone had, and they could just literally just pop up anywhere and just be anywhere, and to experience like different places. Even if they got killed, they could just go like, oh, what? That didn't happen, screw you. And if you got that ability, you'd be able to do that, funny enough.
For me, although the future, it's a tough choice, because the future, I mean, the glimpse of the future would just be, by definition, well, I don't know if by definition it'd be mind-blowing. Maybe it'd be not as exciting as we think it would be. It would be so much like today. It wouldn't, I mean, then again, you could go 10,000 years in the future, but to go back and you know, stand in the same tent as Alexander the Great at the height of his powers, conquering the known world, would just be fuck. Or how about being in the same room as Aristotle tutoring the young Alexander and listening in on that conversation? It would just be, or change, like seeing Nero up close, or seeing Julius Caesar, like Shane said, conquering the Gauls. Just being the total general that he was would just be. And the other one is Jesus. I mean, was he real?
Yeah.
And I'm an atheist, you know, but I mean, the fascination with this guy hasn't waned in 2,000 years.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine.
I actually heard an interesting story about that. Oh no, keep going.
No, I'm done. I just say.
Oh yeah, I heard an interesting story about Jesus. Like apparently, like the history of like someone made a book, the history of debt, and basically what Jesus was like I don't know whether he was a real guy, but somebody that was of that description. That movement was basically just the forgiveness of debt forgiveness, apparently, along those lines. And basically, it's like what the original practice was when every new king came along, debt was forgiven, and that system kind of perpetuated over time. But over at some point, they stopped doing that. And I just got a brief description of the book from Kaiser Report, to be fair. And okay, how did he word it? Okay, yeah, and basically the reason why the church had a beef with him was, a lot, and the debt was also like, because you know what churches do, they forgive sins by getting in Catholic. I think that has something to do with that or whatever. That's a different form of debt, or maybe it's the wording of the maybe the Jewish language or something like that. But it was very interesting. Like, if you get the chance to find that book, like you might be able to understand a bit more than me, or the context a bit better. But apparently, like, the domestic situation in, I guess, Israel or whatever that place was where Jesus was basically the conflict was around those lines. And, it was a bit more relatable than you think, if that makes sense. Like, the situation down on there was more related, and I found that fascinating. And I think like I said, it was a history of debt. I think the name of the book was, or just looked at on try to Google it and see if there's any books.
Wouldn't be in that book. Jesus, I'm making a joke. Jesus wouldn't be in that book.
Yeah, it's funny. It's very funny. The fact that you brought it up. That's
still flying around.
I think Jesus existed. It's just not what we think it is, like according to the Bible.
Right.
Yeah, he was basically just a political and religious activist who got put down by the state. That's pretty much what happened.
Yeah,
I agree.
It's very plausible. Yeah. I've listened to some of these Jesus mythicists, they call them, and I have to say, what?
Dan Brown, the Da Vinci Code.
No. Serious people who
brings clout to what I was.
Serious people who give a very plausible. Serious people who give a very, I mean, if you listen to an hour of these guys talk on YouTube, it becomes very plausible that he didn't exist. But you can see how it could be plausible that he did not exist when you listen to these people. But having said that,
I think he existed, but it's just based on something like the prototypical Jesus that we see in the Bible.
No, obviously that's not true, but right.
I'm pretty sure some dude got executed by the Romans for causing them shenanigans, like making people rise up against. I just think it's a more political activism story.
Right. It was written all decades after the fact, but most, like, I've listened to
at least decades, right? Maybe even centuries.
Decades, yes.
Oh, sorry.
If you're talking about Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, right? But there was a Jewish Roman historian named Josephus who mentioned him at least twice. But one of the times he mentions him, they almost sure that that's an interpolation added much later, that he didn't write it. But he does. But it's not contemporary, but it's near contemporary.
And there were lots of people named Jesus during that time who had similar stories, right?
So
And the thing is, stories get extremely overblown. Like one of the stories that are contemporary, and I know I've brought this up in other podcasts, where it was do you know the Killdozer story?
No, but it sounds awesome.
Like that story is only, it's not even 20 years old yet, and it's already been mythologized. It's like, oh, this guy who bulldozed the town, you know, he did it to stand up for his rights, and he was a hero, and he righted wrongs from the government. And it's like, this is only less than 20 years ago, and people are making myths about this guy that are completely wrong.
That's
So,
happening.
yeah.
There's actually a version of that happening right now. I just thought about it. That's why I was chuckling on the side. Like I literally see, like day by day, slowly it's been dawning on me that I've been seeing the mythification of the guy who started the crypto movement, Satoshi Nakamoto. If you actually listen to people in the crypto space for long enough, you actually hear like it almost sounds like he's like a pseudo Jesus character. It is fascinating, and because it's not even a book, that's the best part. Like, it's a guy that did exist because there's records of him existing. It's just that no one knows his face or his name. He just goes over the pseudonym Satoshi Nakamoto, and people kind of treat it like he's some sort of like otherworldly being, or when people make like different crypto on the same chain as Bitcoin, like Bitcoin Cash or Litecoin, etc. Like or any of the other more pump and dumpy ones, they end up saying something stupid like, "Hey, this is not Satoshi's vision. This is actually Satoshi Nakamoto's vision. So come on and see my coin." And what's it called? And then yes, it's in a more like marketing way, but the way they phrase it, it's so interesting. I think if like that stuff actually becomes the Internet 3.0, I think Satoshi might actually be referred to as a Jesus-like character when people forgot that people used paper money, or it becomes normal to use crypto. Or even if it doesn't happen and that movement dies, and over time people still talks about this legendary Satoshi Nakamoto guy that shook up the system a bit.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Like if you get the chance, like just listen to some of the people that talks about this stuff in conferences or whatever, or people who makes alternate coins like Bitcoin Cash or Bitcoin Diamond, which I don't suggest you touch, and or the diamond one, I don't suggest you touch, or the other, or dark, or etc. It's like this is not my vision. This wasn't his vision. This was his vision. This wasn't his vision. This was like they make it, and it's so polarizing that there's like there's even a polarization.
Bitcoin mythologies.
Yeah, there is a Bitcoin mythology. In a Bitcoin core and the Bitcoin Cash community treats it like how the separation of Christianity, like if there's like the Lutheranism or whatever from the Judea or whatever. I learned this when I was a little kid, so it might be not perfectly accurate, but the way that same reaction is like, hey, this is actually the vision. Like it's more efficient. It's more it's a step towards efficiency, but the way they phrase it and the way they believe it themselves over time, and the way it becomes so polarizing within that community is so fascinating. Like, I'll buy both if one's more convenient and whatever, and that's what most people will do. If that thing gets, starts to get ramping up and there's more usability of those kind of things. Like I'm just like
sure.
For the first people that looked at the internet, like while it was still clunky and garbage, that's kind of what that's how I see it. Like people have so many ideas, branching out, but where it all started, it was indeed this guy that solved a certain problem, like I guess internet scarcity, named Satoshi Nakamoto, who not made the blockchain, but made it popular. and it's like, and the people involved, like, and cryptocurrency is more community based. So the success of a cryptocurrency, if you guys didn't know this, is like community based. Like if your community is just trying to get money, your coin's not going to last long. It's going to be a penny or zero in a bit, and you just get thrown off an exchange. If they're hard at work trying to, trying to get people to use it at the same time, using it themselves, trying to make it better. And then since it's decentralized, it doesn't even need to be one group. It could be thousands on thousands on thousands of people that's not being even paid, and just going like, oh, this thing works well. This thing is like easy to use, or this thing was, et cetera, in places that are not so bank like safe like America is. And and so like that's how I'm kind of seeing this, like, because it has such a net positive effect, but there's so much polarization in the different crypto communities thanks to this initial split between Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, which are both viable coins, to be fair. One acts like a DAO, and one acts like a little bit more like a currency, but like I said, usability. At some point, we'll start using them or not. I honestly don't know the future, but that's besides the point. It's very interesting just seeing it on ground, like the thing, like saying that Jesus was like probably a couple or a political figure that believed in something and was speaking out against something, and his myth kind of spread through there, like after his book, like books was written about him or whatever. Just seeing that on ground, like I'm seeing it on ground, and it's just so fascinating. And of course, some people are doing it for like scammy or scummy reasons, like I want to get rich or whatever. But some people actually just straight up believe, like, hey, this is his actual vision, because that's what they always start off with, because that's the connection they get with it. Like, even though it's a bit more like it's the same thing what any political leader would do. They'll say, hey, this is Satoshi Nakamoto's vision, when they're making a coin that is more currency based instead of token based. And the difference is tokens are like stocks, like a company that wants to decentralize their way of funding. That's a token, and that's the Ethereum ICOs, a lot of them. And
all right. Let's rein in the crypto talk.
Ed and Shane, I didn't get your answers to Dusty's question about what you guys are reading.
Yeah, sorry about that. My mind boner was too hard.
I'm reading audiobooks. I'm doing How to Win Friends and Influence People by Carnegie.
Oh, I've read.
Cool.
I just finished that one 2 months ago.
I read that a few years ago, I think. Yeah,
that's very solid. There's this book called Scale by I think it's Jeffrey West. I really like this thing called complexity theory, and he did the circuit, so you can find some podcasts if you just want to hear him outline it. But basically, if you scale things, if you put them at the right scale, you can see how all mammals have within a very similar range of body size versus total number of heart rates, the scaling laws of cities and crime rates, so many different like biological systems, whether it's like a superorganism like a city or mammals. There's actually a lot more mathematical regularity than you would think. So it just kind of points to some of these underlying structures, kind of ties in ideas of fractals. But anyways, it's very interesting because there's a lot more regularity and like common solutions to common problems at different scales of resolution. So if you're kind of more of a lateral thinker, the complexity theory in that book's really awesome. And I'm slowly chipping away at a guy named, he was on Ham Sarris's podcast, Robert Sapolsky, the endocrinologist / primatologist.
Oh, we did a chat on his newest book called Behave. I'm a huge fan of his work.
I have a signed copy. I even got to ask him about free will. I bugged him for like.
Oh, wow, that's awesome.
What did he say?
It's just not there. No way, no how. Basically, he's not he doesn't like to state things he doesn't have evidence for. Like, he's super, super careful and strict with himself. You can see he's not going out on a limb. He's always very measured. But I kept pushing him, right? And he basically said, he's like, look, it's like whatever part of the causality we can't explain without material explanations, and I don't agree with this at all, by the way. I think he's wrong. But this is what he said. He said that is an ever decreasing window of stuff we can't explain, and he thinks the long-term trend is it's going to go down to about 0. I have some physicists who would explain why that's technically impossible.
Well, hold on a second. Isn't that what you threw up on Twitter the other day? That YouTube link? That determinism is impossible? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, determinism.
So why
The ultimate end goal. Yeah, I agree.
Well, is the ultimate end goal being able to predict what happens, the outcome on a random number generator? Is that kind of where he's leading to?
Well, basically, the logic is something like this. Like at the quantum level, when it comes to like the ways, there's a whole lecture on. I could put the link in the chat. I will afterwards. But anyways, you can't predict the effect on genetics that will occur from like the random radiation. Okay, that you just can't predict how things will manifest at that level. So it's just fundamentally from a bottom up. You can't do that. And then there's also this concept of top-down causality, or you can call it contextual causality. So once you get above a certain level of resolution, like once the physics can explain the chemistry, but once you have the chemical reaction, there's a feedback loop of causality that goes to affect the physics again, and you can't map that interplay. And that interplay happens as you go from physics to chemistry, chemistry to biochem, biochem to cell to multi-cell,
right.
to brain.
What's interesting about what you said and is that he started out saying, and again, I know they're two potentially different conversations, free will versus determinism, but he basically said free will, no way, and that the window of what we know about is getting smaller and what we don't know about is getting smaller and smaller, right? And that it'll eventually approach 0. Okay.
And he knows what he's talking about. So I mean.
Okay. Well, let's grant that. Now we grant that, and then he says, but determinism's impossible because of all this interplay and blah blah blah. Hold on. Let me ask the question. I'm not doubting it.
That's a different guy. It's a different guy saying that. This is a physicist and a cosmologist named.
Sorry, you're right.
George Ellis.
Because
that was the link. George Ellis. He's a complexity theory guy. He's more the way I see the world. But I mean, I love Sapolsky out the ass. But George Ellis, I think is
because
a lot of has my viewpoints. I've got.
Well, at least what I've seen of people who talk about quantum indeterminacy, it's that we haven't figured out the interplay that's going on there. It may not be that it's actually random. It's just that we don't understand it enough. In other words, that the jury.
It's not random. That's the whole thing. It's not actually random. It follows a distribution.
So then it's determined.
No, because with the information of the last one, you at current models, and I don't know enough about mathematics to know why he would state this, but somebody who understands the mathematics says there's a proof that shows why it's, well, technically, even with the past distribution, you can't predict the next one in principle. Now, I can't verify that.
I'm not. My question isn't, will we be able to determine? So here's the thing. If you believe that determinism is true, let's say determinism is a fact in this universe, then in principle, with enough information, you could predict what you're going to have for lunch 20 years from today, right? Because it's determined. You had all the information in the universe now, and you knew how the interplay of all that matter and energy was going to proceed. You could predict what you're going to have for lunch 20 years from now. That's the definition of determinism. What your guy on that video, and I didn't watch it, but I'm asking the question, was saying that presumably he's saying that determinism can't be true because of, on the quantum level, there's things that happen like the two-slit experiment with electrons and all the rest of it, that it's inherently unpredictable. It does not follow a deterministic. There's no way to determine from A to A prime, right? Like the next step is completely so we can't do that now. But isn't it conceivable that we could figure out a way to? In other words, we just don't understand the workings of at the quantum level. But at some point we might.
I understand what you're saying. You can't. I'll just really quickly, and I'll let you speak. You can't, obviously you can't prove something's impossible. That's not how proof works. But well, sorry, in some situations it can. But anyways, long story short, he outlines like 7 or 8 rules, reasons as a physicist and a cosmologist, why it's fundamentally and with mathematics and other examples from science to back up why there are just the way causality works. You can't map all those in a way where you could go from the Big Bang all the way up to Hitler being the exact height he was. Okay, and even just in my layman's terms, the idea that like you could ever sort of actually building a parallel reality, that you could actually have all that information given.
Right.
So I mean, I just don't see why Occam's razor style plus what this physicist is saying, why you'd even walk down the determinism road. I just don't see any validity that as we're all laymen having to make best guesses. I don't see how you could be on the other side of it.
Well,
I agree.
All
I
right.
agree.
So you don't find. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Naeem.
I was just gonna say I kind of agree with what you just said, Shane. I mean, I think it doesn't make sense to say for sure one way or the other whether we will figure this out in the future. It's plausible that we will, but it seems unlikely to me, I would say.
Well, there's 2 questions here. One, will we figure it out? And 2, my interest lies in, is determinism true or is it not true? It's a fascinating question. And the way it becomes persuasive for me is if you think about playing golf and you have a 1-foot putt, okay, and you miss it, okay. If we could rewind everything in the universe again back so that you have another swipe at that putt, okay, you're going to miss it again and again and again and again, a trillion times in a row. It's never the outcome. It's very persuasive to me that if we put the universe in the exact same state, if we could rewind the past to any point, what's extra going on that would change the outcome of that putt, for example?
Well, how would all of the factors always be the same, though?
I'm stipulating that they're the same.
Okay, but that seems like a borderline impossible hypothetical example.
Well, no. Well,
what if
you could call it impossible. I'm saying.
I shouldn't say impossible. I don't like to use that word. You know me, but
yeah,
I'm saying that given the state of the universe at point in time X, the next number of things that are going to happen had to happen that way, because to stipulate that they could have happened in another way would have to necessitate stipulating that something else was different. Something in the universe was different.
Well, here's the whole entire problem with this is that omnipotence is required.
No, not for no.
Yes, it is.
What?
The amount of
For
information you need
to be like determinist, omnipotence is required.
And I don't understand what that means.
Okay, so say think of just quantum entanglement or something. We would have to have all eyes and ears and be able to measure data across the entire universe.
Yeah. I'm not postulating that's even possible. But go ahead.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. In order, that's why I think it's not unable to determine like what. I think we will never be able to determine the exact sequence of events and future events.
Right, that's a forecast. I understand that. What I'm saying is, I'm just talking about whether it's true or not whether or not we can prove it or recreate it or disprove it. I'm saying that.
Shouldn't that be how you decide whether it's true or not?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Yes.
And how do you know that will think of someone's state of mind. Like, have you ever, it's a weird thing to bring up in this situation, but have you ever seen Rick and Morty? Like, what would happen to your mind if one person or multiple people had the ability to keep track of that much information at once? How would they view the world? Would you be like Rick? Would you be like, oh,
I don't know,
I'm Willy Wonka in this?
Mark,
I could destroy anything.
Yeah, that's why I say omnipotence is required for this argument of free will not being free.
Let me take another swipe at this. You're out to dinner last night and you can get chocolate or vanilla, and you decide to get chocolate. Okay. If we could reverse time and go back to that point again, you couldn't have chosen the other. That's determinism. If your brain was in that exact state, how could you have made a different choice? Everything would be exactly the same.
But you're saying that's a huge if, though. You're saying everything would be exactly the same. Like, how likely is that to be the case, though?
Andrew,
I think what argument against that?
Let me try to interpret
back time.
Yeah. I mean, Shane, take a crack. What I'm saying, I'm asking you to enter.
I know what you're saying, Ed. We've talked about this for so many hours. So sorry, what's his name? The George Ellis deals with this exact same situation, and he says if everything was configured the same, in his opinion, the same thing would happen next by definition because it's the same setup, right?
Right.
The setup goes forward, but that doesn't mean it's deterministic because it comes back to what you think changes over time, right? Because like time, whether time is absolute or relative or like a real thing or not, it's like there's something that is causality if causality exists, or time is the changing of things as they move forward. So just because the same thing would happen with the same setup doesn't mean that you can determine in advance what will happen, or that in that moment of causality, all the causality it doesn't involve free will because it depends on what
you're bringing in separate. Yeah, you're bringing in. I'm not arguing. I'm not saying we could predict any of this. I'm saying for those that doubt determinism, and I have some doubt about it, I guess, but it's very persuasive when you just look at the past and you understand. If you consider the past at any particular moment, there's only so many things. How many things could happen? How many different things could happen a trillionth of a second from this instance? Okay. The determinist would say only one thing could happen. Okay. The only way that can't be true, only one set of things could happen. Right? You can't be in two places a trillionth of a second. You can't be across town. You can only be marginally physically further away from point X than you are now. Do you understand? Does this make sense? I mean, I know Dusty gets dragged down by this stuff. I find it fascinating. This isn't really free will. I mean, it loops into free will, but it's more about if we rewound the clock, how could things be different in the preceding moment after we start that clock again? Everything's exactly.
So what if you're just rewinding the clock, nothing is changing?
Right.
But that doesn't mean the clock going forward is determined.
But okay, so let's stop right there. All right, so let's say that doesn't mean everything going forward is determined. But if I break up the future into trillionth of a second increments, couldn't you now see that the future could be determined as well?
But that actually is what the future is. That's literally reality going forward. That's like that's actually you're just describing reality, which is
right, but
causality going forward.
Right.
Yeah, that's a short-term future. You can't it gets blurry.
I think they're at least.
I think it boils down to if Sapolsky believes that our ability to know these things goes down to zero, then in order to do that, we would have to be omnipotent.
Well, I agree with you. I don't think it's ever going down to zero.
I agree with that too. You'd have to have full information to predict it, even if you could explain it all in principle from
You
data
never
you don't have.
know what you don't know. So how could you always? We're never going to get to a point where we know everything, because how do you know about things you don't know about? You don't. Plus,
Like,
I thought like we don't know if like some star a billion light years away causes a supernova, which impacts some really insignificant thing on Earth. It's like we would have to be able to see everything in real time and able to predict these things. So it's just not possible. That's not within the human realm.
And let's not forget, we don't even need to take it to space. We could take it to like near your house. Like you're sitting down in your house right now, but somewhere in the grass, relatively close by, but not too close by, there is a squirrel sleeping in a tree, or a bird farting in the air, or ants just crawling in the ground, or a leaf, or hey, even a grain of grass dying, just the grain, one grain of grass that you need to take into account, or maybe like the way the wind blows slowly, like.
Yeah, it's just too much information. I don't think it's humanly possible.
There's a famous quote about that. There's a famous quote about that, which is, if Cleopatra's nose had been, any longer, the future would have been totally different. Have you ever guys heard about that? I should look it up.
That sounds interesting.
Cleopatra's nose. The point is, that's why in Star Trek, for example, when they go back to the past and they're like, we got to make sure we don't. Pascal, it was Blaise Pascal who said it. Cleopatra's nose, had it been shorter, the whole face of the world would have changed. What he's pointing out is, so when Star Trek goes back in time, and they're like, oh, we got to make sure we don't fuck anything up, it's impossible not to fuck anything up if you go back in time, because for all you know, that blade of grass you stepped on, the next guy would have slipped and fell on it, and he never would have had his kid, who would have become president, who would have nuked the world, and blah, 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 blah. So, right. So tracking all this stuff seems the nearest thing to impossible. But that doesn't mean that the universe isn't deterministic. It's fascinating shit. I'm fascinated.
How does it not mean that the universe is deterministic?
To Halsey's comment, which is our ability to predict goes down to zero, then I don't believe that. I just think that's impossible to do.
That's scientific.
Stop moving then. Like after like that kind of knowledge, what kind of action can you take? I'm curious, because that's an interesting rabbit hole, don't you think? No, wait, Sam.
I do, but that knowledge is impossible to achieve. Like, you'd have to be completely omnipotent to be able to process that.
Let me ask the panel an easier question: blonde, brunette, or redhead? And I don't want a fucking story.
Red, blonde, brown.
I'm gonna go with redhead.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah.
So Andrew goes with redhead. Mark, what do you get? What are you getting in
Brunette, maybe blonde.
What?
Brunette, maybe blonde.
He gave me two fucking answers. Come on, I said one word.
Brunette.
Thank you. Dusty?
Brunette.
Shane?
Oh, red all the way. Then
wow.
blonde.
2 redheads. Holy shit.
Oh,
Yeah.
I choose brunette, and I am shocked. I fucking love redheads too, but I'm really shocked about 2 redheads, I have to say.
10 years ago it was brown, and then I'm into a blonde chick right now. So I'll work on my mind. A year from now, blondes will be the best thing ever. So.
All right, so
I've only dated 2 blondes.
So all right. So the next question is, skinny, medium, or chubby?
Skinny.
Andrew?
Medium.
Dane? Dusty?
Medium.
Got to be curvy. 2 skinnies, no way to go.
Yeah.
Good
Yeah.
man. Mine would be medium, but curvy wouldn't be a problem. Skinny wouldn't be a
By
problem.
curvy, I mean proportion. I don't mean
Oh, you
there's
can-
not any overweightness here. It's just there's just a real curve
Well,
to the body.
the choice was chubby, medium,
Yeah.
and skinny.
Well, the thing is, they could all look good. It really just depends on how the mix is.
Of course they could, and they often do.
It would be very interesting if there was a girl on this podcast that actually had her version of it. What would hers be interesting? Like, dude.
All right, the last question I'll ask is waxed or natural? Those are your only two choices, waxed or natural.
I gotta go with wax.
What is wax here? Are we talking waxing their eyebrows?
What do you think?
Their head?
What do you think?
I think he's talking about the dirtiest example possible, Dusty.
Oh my!
We're talking about.
That may have been nice enough.
Is that what we're
I'm not talking about a toe. Mark,
You know what? I should add that last part.
Mark, what would your answer be?
Oh, wax.
So you would prefer a skinny brunette waxed girl, okay? Andrew, you want a medium redhead who's either waxed, a waxed, Dusty.
Well, I don't like dealing with jungle, so wax it is.
All right, a waxed medium brunette. Shane?
No makeup, no waxing. Everything's natural.
There you go, buddy. Now you're talking. All right, so you want a natural redhead who's medium, and I'll go natural brunette medium. Boy, we've solved the world's problems just by answering those questions. Look how much progress.
You don't have to fight either. We're doing different things. So there you go. It works out.
I dated we're not going to start with that. Forget it.
Yeah.
Yes, let's not be talk about our conquests in life.
No, we're not going to talk about it.
We can say that for some.
Hey, did you guys hear
I don't think
a guy was killed by a shark? A man dies of shark attack off of Cape Cod. Did you hear about that?
Oh, damn.
Cape Cod.
Yeah. Now there's man eaters off Cape Cod. That's for sure. Anyway.
Oh, have you ever heard of the legacy of? No, don't lose the name. Something Will Robinson, some guy that was pretending to be a doctor. Will Robertson, I think. It's I heard it from like a YouTube just funny news channel, and basically this guy pretended to be a doctor for a while, and he got caught, of course, over time. But he had so much confidence that he tricked a lot of people over time. And after he got caught the first time, because of just that spunk, he got let off with like I think a fine or a warning or whatever, and he left. And then he did it somewhere else, but he made his own little thing, and like little doctor's office and stuff like that. And you should look into this story. It's very funny, and he's in jail now.
I've got another story for you, and then we'll wrap it up. Because I'm not going to explain the story. I'll have you guys look it up. The story is some kid and, well, I guess teenager in Russia cut off his own head with a chainsaw.
How the fuck did you do that?
You can go look it up. It's a news story.
Okay.
Accidentally or intentionally.
All
All right, guys. It's good hanging out.
Yeah, it was fun.
Great
All
time.
right, I'm not sure we're doing height next week. Yeah, that's right. I think we're doing the Righteous Mind next week.
Oh, sweet.
And then the month after that, we'll tackle the new height book. I gotta buy that.
Before then.
All right,
Well,
guys.
the Righteous Mind isn't too. It's a really easy read, I thought.
It is. It's just that because of how I like go on and off about a bunch of things, and because of the amount of different complicated subjects I'm looking at the same time, I need more order in my life, as someone named Peterson once said.
Well, I'll tell everybody the best thing about the righteous mind is probably the disgust test. Those are just hilarious and funny.
Oh, definitely. I love all of his disgust.
Those weird tests that, hey, do you get disgusted by this? Most people do. All right, so we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. We're just going to go ahead and do some plugs here. I'm just going to go straight down the line how I see it. You got some plugs, Mark?
Yep, I got some plugs. Well, you can catch me at Mark1 on Twitter. That was called. And I don't really pay attention to Instagram anymore. And Facebook, I think it's, just look up Mark Benjamin. It'll be easier. And as for stuff, I just, resources I use, that's what I normally do. My normal plugs is things that I brought up. Rogue Money is a podcast I listen to. There's also Progressive Soapbox is a progressive, and I go into the community and converse a little bit. I also do the same thing with Money GPS. I do this also with Litecoin Foundation. I also do this with CryptoSpark and others in that space. I won't get too far into it because I know you guys have time and shit. And last but not least, a lot of them is just recap. So yeah, Crypto Zero, and there's a lot of other podcasts. I'm not going to try to name. There's so many. Besides that, yeah, you can catch me at Mark the One in Twitter, and my Gmail, I guess, if you want to, Gmail chat, or do this would be like markben93@gmail.com. And I think that sounds
right.
nicely. Like until I can finally put down a video because my computer is just so weak, even though the damn Alienware, it's dying and old and sad. So yeah, one day.
All right, Andrew, you got your bookie boo-haws to go over?
Yep. If people want to, they can check out my YouTube channel, Mindgasms, and I read chapters of my novel on there and make my own videos about ideas. And I do a podcast where I've talked to almost everyone on this panel here, and then there's also my blog if people want to check it out at mindgasms.theblogpress.com, and I'm on the Facebook Ibuha and the Twitter at Andrew Meintzer. My last name has that weird German spelling, Meintzer. And yeah, I think, I also have a Patreon page. If anyone wants to check it out, they can check it out at Mindgasms. If people want to give me money, that would be awesome. So yeah, that's it.
Great. How about you, Ed? What do you got for us?
Real quick, I'm Sam's Bulldog. I'm on Twitter. Find me on Twitter, Edward M. Kennedy 2. Sam's Bulldog. You can find me on YouTube as well, but primarily Twitter is where I'm at. See me there. Thank you.
Awesome. Shane, do you got anything to plug?
Yeah, I plug the YouTube channel Rebel Wisdom, especially if you
yeah, I see that.
Yeah, I'm a big JP Jordan Peterson fan, so they do a lot of stuff, but then they also bleed it into some other related things. And just recently, I've been on a big religion kick, so I don't get the impression that you guys are self-identified Christians, but most of what I've been listening to recently is in that realm. So unless that's your jam, probably not necessarily the most elucidating thing. But there is this podcast called Unbelievable. It's usually the format of a Christian and atheist. The one on evolution was quite good. And the one on the legacy of Paul was very good, because the legacy of Paul was more philosophical, historical, unbelievable podcast. And then the one on evolution was basically why, as a Christian or religious person, you shouldn't have a problem with evolution, which obviously no one should have a problem with evolution. It's the most powerful, useful idea in the world. So that's kind of interesting. And don't find me on Twitter because I'm not always my best self on that. But maybe next time I come by, I'll have something more interesting to share. So,
Shane, if you're interested, we have another mixed mental artist who talks with us sometimes is Hayden Bruce, and I've talked with him and Ed, and he has his own podcast called Pragmatic Christian. And he talks about some of Jordan Peterson's ideas in applying philosophical pragmatism to Christianity. So you might be interested in that.
Well, I originally, when Hunter messaged me about the pragmatic Christianity thing, there was two guys associated with it, and I don't know which one I talked to for about an hour and a half. I can't remember if it was Hayden or the other fellow, because there was two in the email chain that I got. But I have listened once. Ed mentioned he was on it, so I've listened to like 3 or 4 of his episodes. Some of them are actually 1 and 2 of them was really cool. I've only listened to 4. 2 are just stellar. So I hope I have a startup, so I'm self-employed. So I'm just using that as an excuse to not get too involved in things. But yeah, I hope to come out again and maybe follow up on the pragmatic Christianity thing, because I'm literally, I've been talking to you guys. I'm trying to go to 2 or 3 church services tomorrow while I'm visiting Miami. I really want to see that it's different down here, dude. It's that it is far up north. So it's it's been interesting. So yeah.
Awesome. All right, so I'll go ahead and do the plug-aroos and go ahead check out mixedmetallarts.online, where we have our belt tests and our articles. You can also check out our podcast. Last episode, we had Tiger, Father of the Victorious, which is the English translation of his name. It's Arabic. His name is Nemer. Great episode, all about instilling comedic value in the Middle East and how much trouble he had doing so. And always check out our social media presence. We got Twitter. You can find us at Mixed Metal Arts. If you want to follow some of our key figures, you can follow Hunter Motts, Brian Callen, Woke Centrist, me, of course, amongst others. There's a large network of us. Also, check out our Facebook page. If you want to see where the actual dojo and idea clashes happen, it's mostly on the Facebook page. That's where people are pretty much arm barring and flying whatever those damn jiu-jitsu moves are called. Yeah, that's where we do our jiu-jitsu, our mental jiu-jitsu. And we have a couple other things. You can check out Instagram. We do some announcements there. But Facebook, that's where pretty much everything takes place. We do Twitter stuff occasionally, but all the heavy discussions are on Facebook. So just go to Facebook and search for the Mixed Metal Arts group. We have a Facebook page as well as our discussion group, which is pretty active. A lot of smart people in there. And yeah, that's it. Next week we're going to be discussing Jonathan Haidt's The Righteous Mind. Very awesome book. And I will have to take a look at it again before I do that. No, I don't have that much pull, man. He's been on the podcast, the regular podcast, once, I think.
Call and see.
But I don't know. It's worth having Hunter. He's like a superstar right now, so he's kind of hard to pull because he just came out with the book. But I don't know. Maybe we can nudge Hunter to see if we can get him on again. But yeah, thank you everybody for watching this discussion. Next week we talk about The Righteous Mind. I'm very excited. All right. Well, thank you everybody for watching, and have a great evening.
Adios, everyone. Great talking.
Be good.
All right, we're offline.
I'm showing it still live.
Wait a second.
Yeah, because there's a delay.
What's that?
There's a little bit of delay.
Wait, did that actually get posted under something associated with MMA?
Yeah, this is broadcast.
Oh, Geez, I'm glad people rated Sam's questions about women. I could have definitely gone off the deep end on that.
Well, I don't want to get too explicit because I was being broadcast to people. Oh wait, it just told me it failed to.
Yeah, it says we're still live.
That's even better.
It does. I see it.
Man, it's not. You're right. It's not stopping the broadcast. I don't know what's going on here.